All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Into the Storm. Thanks to VIP Mortgage and Bison Ventures, please, for having us in this awesome studio. Thank you to my nephew Trey over there, who's our podcast engineer, and my sister Trisha Madrid over there, who's a podcast producer, which you all know. But she also does way more than that. She's our marketing director here at Bison Ventures, and she's also business development for us as well, licensed loan officer. So today we have an incredibly awesome person and one of my closest friends, and our second time on the show, first time going to be ever shown. Yeah. We have the widely known Brian North of North&Co. Dude, thanks for coming, because I think today's going to be a very special episode.
More than excited, and have been quietly waiting for the phone call. So there's just not a lot of, there's really probably no male person in my life that knows more about what I've been up to the last few years than you. So,
you know, it's funny about that, because I did ask him recently. I was like, hey, dude, do you think you might want to come back on? And he goes, I really just been waiting for you to ask me since you told me the last one didn't work. Yeah. But I was kind of embarrassed, so I felt like, dude,
I mean,
things happen.
You don't start calling podcasts and being like, hey, so think I can get on your podcast?
With that being said, though, anybody out there that wants to have me on there, I'm not afraid to ask. Please call.
I love it.
So and we do have people that hit us up that want to be on, but they're just usually not the right guests.
So we're trying to cast a wider net, I think, with Brian. So sometimes we assume that everybody knows you because you are pretty present, and you do many podcasts. But I just think in the community, everybody knows who you are. But I think your new venture in life is to go way beyond just the Scottsdale Arcadia market, right? So we want to go bigger. So we will go deeper into who you are. I think than if we were just going to kind of just let it go for the people that we think is maybe going to be attracted to this. So we have a lot to talk about today, so this one may go longer than we think. But I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about your childhood, and because I think a lot of that has to do kind of where you're at today, and all your new stuff going on. But so talk a little bit about that. I know you're originally from Southern California, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And go into that a little bit.
Yeah, originally born in the amazing, robust metropolis of Santa Ana, California. Yeah, which is
where?
Yeah, exactly. It's right in the heart of Orange County, Southern California. And at least when my memories go back, I go back to a time of going to South Coast Plaza Mall, and one of my favorite things every year was going to the Lowrider show. So if that gets you into Santa Ana, California, I literally remember my aunt taking me by my hand and saying, come with me, I'm going to go show you something cool. And sitting on the curb like we were going to a 4th of July parade and watching hundreds of lowriders bounce down the street.
Which I would still love to do.
Me too. You know that. So, was raised by a very young single mom. She had me when she was 17 years old. And we were single 2 years after that. My dad has always been prevalent in my life, but was geographically separate. He was 2 hours away, which is like the worst distance you can possibly be, because it's like close enough that he's right there, but far enough away you can't see him whenever you want. And after that, my mom was just scrapping to make ends meet. And so, sometimes if she really grew up and could afford a babysitter for a couple weeks, great. But if not, I was left to my own devices. Traditional latchkey kid, and really I had no supervision, so I was left to do whatever I wanted to do, pretty much. So, I born in Santa Ana, and then I lived in pretty much every not good city in Orange County before I moved there at like 15 years old. And that childhood was full of a lot of beautiful things. One thing I'll just get foundationally right now I can get out of the way is I was loved. My mom loved me. I mean, I knew it. I had that. I had hugs and kisses and love, and she wanted to do great for me in terms of providing for me. But, later I realized we were pretty bad off. We didn't have much. And most of the time we moved because I didn't know it, but she was behind on rent. And there was this thing called getting evicted. And so, sometimes every 3 months, 5 months, 6 months, a year. I think the longest, I think I maybe went to 1 or 2 schools before middle school for the whole year, 1 or 2. The cool part was Orange County's near the beach. And the safest place for me to be was generally not at home or in the apartment complex.
Right.
And so I did whatever I could to get to the beach. And that created my love of surfing and sun and adventure. And I now realize at 45 years old, it's still the thing I love to do the most.
So you had a brother as well?
Yeah, half brother and half sister.
Okay.
Get right in there. My half sister, I didn't know was my half sister until I was 33 years old. So at 33, my mom came to town to visit here in Phoenix. We came home from breakfast, and my dad, who I call my dad my whole life, the one I reference as being geographically separate, was in my living room. And I was like, what are you doing here, Dad? It's like, well, your mom asked me to come and be here because she had something to tell you. And if I'm being real, at the moment, I thought she was going to tell me she was sick, like terminally sick. And she sat me down, and my dad sitting behind her and said, I don't really know how to say it, but your dad's not your dad. And so I found out at that moment that my sister was my half-sister. So a half-sister and a half-brother, both younger than me. My younger sister's 4 years younger than me. My younger brother's 12 years younger than me from another marriage. And I mean, I was man of the house from a very young age. I was protecting a beautiful young, my mom was 27 when I was 10 or 11. And, you know, I don't necessarily know how to say it. You know, I was like 11 going on 20. You know what I mean? I was so street smart by that point. I'd spent so much time like just out seeing things. Mm-hmm. And then I had a little sister. So that created a pretty gnarly protector. And I was pretty efficient at a pretty early age of being resourceful and creating, you know, scanning. I can see danger from a mile away. And, you know, those are some of the things in short that have honed along the way.
Do you still have that like protector, like mode in you for those same people?
For every single person in my life.
Yeah.
Literally every single person in my life. It's something that's one of my favorite parts of me that's gotten me here, and it's also really debilitating. There's a really dark shadow side to it as well, which is like
comes with a lot of responsibility and a lot of guilt.
And you can't shake that responsibility, right? It's like at some point those deep dark moments where you just want some reprieve and you don't know how to shake it because that thing is just embedded in me. Yeah.
So your dad was at the Christmas party last year. Yeah. Was that your real dad, or is that your dad you thought was your dad?
Yeah, so we'll call it my dad and my biological dad.
Okay.
Because my dad's my dad. My dad's the same as anybody you're going to come across that's proud of their relationship with their dad. Yeah. That's my dad. He's my non-biological father. Yeah. It changed nothing. In fact, you know, my biological father I've never met. I know where he is. Looks like a really cool dude. He does real estate, likes to surf and sail all over the world and skate at late 50s, early 60s.
And you figured that out recently too,
yeah,
right?
I just went and stalked him on social media. Yeah, my mom.
That was like 2 years ago?
Yeah, 3 years ago. Yeah. So I haven't met him yet, but yeah, my dad, who I call my dad, non-biological father, was at the Christmas party. Again, he's my dad. You know what I mean? I proudly introduce him as my dad. He's, you know, my mom gave me love, but she wasn't there to really keep me in a box, I guess, per se. Yeah. And my dad, I got whatever values I have from my dad, the way I value life, the way I value money, the way I value just generally doing the right thing. That stuff comes from my dad. So, and then my grandfather, his father, Grandpa North, Jerry North, is my entrepreneurial spirit. You know, he's the one that taught me business. He's the one that taught me to honor your word, a handshake. I sat with my grandfather before he passed away, and I was fortunate as he was, you know, aging, and asked him what he was most proud of in business one time. And he said he ultimately had to file bankruptcy in the early 90s on his new construction plumbing business. And he told me the thing he was the most proud of was that every local business owner that had either had him on like a draw or a loan schedule because he was in construction, he paid back personally before he filed bankruptcy. That was the thing he was most proud of. And so for me, it's those kinds of things that I carry with me too in my life. But my dad's a legend.
It's funny because like, when I saw him at the Christmas party, you were obviously very proud of this guy, but you didn't really talk about him that much before that day. And I kind of, in my mind, I always thought, you always said you were raised by a single mom, and your dad. So even though your dad was 2 hours away, you didn't see him all that much. Mm-hmm. You still have that feeling of just like, dude, like that didn't matter to you.
Yeah, no, we saw him every other weekend. And then in the summers, you know, we'd maybe get a little more time. And even when we were with him, he worked new construction plumbing, you know, I mean, he was like I don't know if he's a superintendent or what, but he ran the job site, but he was also a laborer. He was like a lead by example guy, which is another thing for me, you know, it's like no job too small. Right. And, So he was a grinder. His work ethic was insane, and he worked 6 days a week. Even when we were with him, Sundays were the day where he'd take us and do something cool. But yeah, man, I remember I was 13 years old, and I was looking for something in his bedroom one time, like a key or a flashlight or something weird. And I came across this book that was sitting on his desk, and it was like 99 things to do with your kids on the weekend. And this will be the first time I feel like I want to get emotional for sure, but it was this thing where like I was enough grown up to know what that meant, that like I didn't see my dad but 4 days a month, right? But here he was like at the library, which my dad's not a library guy, like getting a book on like what could he do to be a better dad and really bring joy to us when we were kids. And it's things like that it just, it's like, it's really interesting about parenting, right? Like I had an experience with my kids, now post-divorce, where like the less time you get with your parents, it's almost like you really adopt, like it's more saturated, the time that you get with them. So while I talk about being raised by my mom, I was straight up raised by my mom. I was like, she fed me, she bathed me, she put me to bed, she got me to school. So that like raised part that you talk about, but like there's so much goods, like so many goods that came from my relationship with my dad, even though it was fleeting. My kids, I took my son Royce to dinner one time about a year after the divorce process started, and asked him how he was feeling. I had this question I would always ask him: how's your head and how's your heart? Because they're two very different things. And as we worked through that answer, he said to me, Dad, and he was 12 at the time. He goes, Dad, he goes, when you were home 100% of the time, you were at work so much, we only got about 10% of you. But now that we're only with you 50% of the time, we get you 100% of the 50%. So it's better. Yeah. That's what he said to me. I was like, what the fuck?
That's wise.
So well, he's a wise kid, though.
He's bonkers.
He also was on the phone with his Japanese teacher one night in Japan, learning like a year ago when we were at your house. Totally. So he's an advanced child. Yeah. But no, and I agree with that 100%. It's like for all the divorced people out there, I think you have two paths, right? If you're going to go and you're going to get part-time, a lot of people you end up just either going kind of separating yourself and just the relationship kind of sours, or you go all in and you do become very close with the kids, because you do get, it's also guilt, right? You're like, okay, I got them this weekend. I'm spending every second I can, and I want to make them feel like I'm doing everything possible to make sure that they know that I love them, but really just they'd be fine hanging on the couch watching TV. Yeah. But instead, you're going to Disneyland and freaking Zion.
We're all in.
Yeah, exactly.
Even on weekdays, I'm all in.
Yeah.
When I get them, it's I literally have two schedules. I have kid on, kid off schedules. Yeah. I'm the kid when it's kids off schedule, and it's full on dad when they're here.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk about after you graduated from high school and you went on to, you moved to Fort Collins?
Close to Fort Collins, a little town called Berthoud. Yeah, it's about maybe 20 minutes south of Fort Collins. My mom remarried to end up my stepfather, father of my younger half-brother, and they moved me there halfway through 8th grade, pre-high school. And my mom always said, she had this thing like, I'm going to make you a promise. You're never going to have to go to 2 high schools. And she did. She fulfilled that promise. I went to the same high school for 4 years. And, man, this town was like 2,500 people. I think the school had 350 kids in it, so 400 kids. My class was like the largest class in history at 110 kids or something like that. It was that classic, like Varsity Blues, like small town, kind of
new
deal.
Kid, all the kids had gone to elementary school together, and now they're going to high school. And then
full on. Yeah, I mean, dude, I'm like Pepsi generation, dude. Landed there like, fresh out of New Wave, just coming out of hair band.
You got Jimmy's on.
Flow hose, flop over hair, I'm like, great, let's go skate, I'm like, what are you talking about? I remember I went upstairs, the high school, they just built a brand new high school, had two stories, and I went upstairs and I walked to the end of the senior hall, and I had a big like glass looking down to the parking lot, and there were kids down there with a sawhorse that they'd put horns on, and they were roping the sawhorse. And I was like, where am I right now? Yeah. I knew I was fish out of water for sure.
Were they a big football school?
Oh, yeah. Well, every school in that, in that like part of the country, that type of the part of the country is a big football school. Just because there's nothing else to do. Like that's what you do. High school sports are the end of the earth, Right. It's the reprieve for everybody who works all week, because it's just very agricultural, just kind of,
The whole town gets behind the Friday night football games, and they all talk about the game.
That's it.
On Friday at lunch.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's in Letterman's jackets, and their jerseys, and
high school,
Spirit Day stuff.
Quarterback, state, and the
you got it.
Captain of the cheer.
That's it.
It's Friday Night Lights.
That's it.
Just did it.
Friday Night Lights, Varsity Blues.
So you guys went. So you went there, and what was your high school life then like?
Yeah. Oh man, that's funny. I'm gonna answer it honestly. It was really just pretty much about skateboarding, baseball, punk rock shows, and girls. That's pretty much what high school was for me. I literally I measured C minuses. How close am I to getting a C minus? Because if I could get C minuses, I could play baseball.
Right.
Which is hilarious because, school was so boring for me.
Yeah.
Meaning like, I don't know how to say this and have it not sound the way it's going to sound, but like it was easy. I could have done anything I wanted to in high school, and it was extra boring for me. And so I just antagonized teachers. Like literally, I was that kid. I was like the kid that just antagonized the teacher because I already knew what they were talking about or where they were going with it. And it was like, I was
so very similar to how you are now.
Yeah.
Know it all.
Yeah, some things never change. Some things never change. Yeah.
So did you just read a boatload of books? I mean, this is pre-internet. So how are you acquiring all that knowledge that you knew?
You saw it once and you understood it.
Yeah.
And everybody else
didn't.
That's the best
way to describe it. It was, I'll tell you, I didn't do well at math because you actually have to learn math.
Yeah.
But I had a crazy retention, almost photographic memory for general information. I was a latchkey kid, so I watched a ton of TV, but I watched like PBS and I watched the History Channel, and I really wasn't like a cartoon kid. I was like way more fascinated by politics and global events and things like that. Ultimately, when I went to school, first it was a history major. Then I had a crush on the poli-sci professor, so then it was poli-sci, and then I ended up a sociology major. So that really ended up carrying through. It just was always really fascinated by kind of political structure and governing structures, people.
Do you think that, not to move forward, but do you think that because you're still that way, you do have a photographic memory, and your ability to retain information is pretty crazy? Do you think that kind of puts you, so you're always thinking?
Oh, yeah.
You're always like, you're here, I'm going to do this, because just all of a sudden you're like, boom, you just remember every single thing that you see and hear and read. Yeah, so
we're all over the place, which is just the way it's going to be, and it's my life is. But, my friend Ricky Williams, he's an astrologer, and he's really awakened me to the value of astrology. And I'm a Virgo, and if we distill it all down, he's like, Virgo's purpose in the world is to get information from the exterior world to be able to help people grow. That's really what Virgo's purpose is in the world. And so for me, it's like, it's the most comfortable thing. I've had a lot of people that have worked close to me say, I would never want to live a day in your brain. Right. And for me, it's like, I'm perfect. I'm like, why? Like, it's so offensive. Like, it's so fun,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm just constantly consuming information and trying to compute and distill it down to how I can give it to someone later in a way that'll help them.
And you have like a thing in your brain that you feel like you need to do that.
Yeah, it's just what I do.
Or like, I have to tell everybody, I want to show people how to do things. I want to help people do things, and I want to just coach people to do things.
Yeah, but it's interesting. It's not like how when you have that little addiction to work and you're like, oh, I want to work, I want to grind, I want to make some money, but and then on the weekends you're like, but I'm so tired, I want to sit down. I don't think about I have to do that and then I need a break.
Yeah.
It just is. It's what I do.
You're an I get to rather than I have to.
Yeah,
person.
For sure. I don't even think about it that. Yes, the I get to is that I'm really happy being me. And so that's the I get to part, but I really don't have to think about it. There's not a lot of processing that goes on. What I will share with you is that in the past, I would dim it down because I was told it was too much for people. And now I could give a fuck. Yeah. I do not care.
Yeah. So before we get to the I don't give a fuck part.
Yeah.
So I just want to just kind of move through the timeline a little bit.
Cool.
So you end up moving or you end up going to school,
Yep.
right, in Durango.
Yep. Yeah, that was after high school. I moved from Berthoud to Durango. My high school girlfriend, we broke up for a short period of time. She went to Durango. Her parents hated me. Well, they kind of missed who I was. I didn't drink or do drugs. I didn't get drunk for the first time until after high school, right? So but I had green polka dots and 5 earrings in my first big tattoo. So it was like, it was fully oxymoronic. It did not make sense. They're like, this kid's a really bad kid. Look at him. But like, if they would have just sat down and asked me some questions, I knew where I was going. I just was who I was. She called me and said, I love you. I miss you. Come to Durango. And I did, like, packed up my stuff in like a week and went to Durango. And the day I got there, I like went to her house and I give her a hug and she's like, come inside. And I have to tell you, my parents said I can't be with you and I have an option. I can either come home or I can stay here and not be with you. Those are my only options. And I was like,
very sweet.
Okay, cool. Well, I guess I live in Durango now. And I stayed the night there and I got a newspaper the next morning and went hunting for an apartment and had to undo her leaving me forever in that moment and being completely on my own. I was 19 years old at that point, and I had $750 in my pocket that I door knocked my best friend's parents and asked them if I could borrow the money. I asked if I could borrow $350, and they went in their bedroom, talked privately, came back out and handed me a check folded up in half and said, you don't owe us anything. We know you make us proud. Gave me $750. That's what I had to live off of. And it was my first and last month's deposit. I got a job at Blockbuster Video, and that was the beginning of the end.
Nice. So did you end up going to school there?
Yeah, I went to, right away walked into admissions, had no idea. I had no guidance, dude. Nobody in my family could tell me how to go to school. I literally had no idea what to do. I was stick me on Mars, basically. They had me sign a bunch of paperwork. I got a student loan, and pretty much my anchor there was I knew how to fish really well, so I went fly fishing a lot. And when winter rolled around, that was my second passion besides surfing at that time in my life was snowboarding. And I went all in with the idea that I was going to somehow end up competing in snowboarding, and ended up having a little run where I competed in half pipe for a little while, but that was my escape while I went through really dark time. At the end of that first year, I tore my ACL. I was very lonely. Had no one to take care of me. I was mending an ACL tear. And that was the first time I experienced depression, and had to battle that for a couple of years. Came out and ended up having the best 4 or 5 years of my life. That carried me through 2004. I moved to Durango in 1997, and in 2004 I graduated. I graduated in 2001, stayed for 3 years after that, and just lived life to the full, like just maxed it out. Yeah. Worked at a great restaurant job and ended up waiting tables on the owner of the Schumacher Mercedes-Benz, Werner Schumacher, here in Scottsdale, and he offered me a job. So I moved to Phoenix in August of 2004 to sell cars.
So there's more to the story than that.
You're about to ask me the part. You're about to ask me the part that I don't ever tell.
Hold on, no. I'm not going to ask him to tell it for you. Yeah. So, and it may be different, but he told you how great of a job you did, and if you really wanted a job, call him. Yep. And you kept calling him, and he never answered.
Would not take my call.
Would not take your call. So finally, you end up getting a hold of him, and he says,
I never got a hold of him, actually. I called for 4 months. So it was from February of that year until roughly May of that year. So it was about 4 months. I called every single day, and I would like navigate the operator. Yeah. This is Diane. I'm like, Diane, it's Brian again. How's your son? How was your trip this weekend? Like, we were best friends, and she would just send me to voicemail, like doing her job, and he never called me. Eventually, his son, Michael, called me, but I never got through to Mister. Okay. Yeah, Michael called me and was
I didn't realize it wasn't Michael. I thought it was Michael.
No, yeah. So Werner was his dad. He's still here with us. We have the same birthday, by the way, which is crazy, and because he's been such a catalyst in my life. But never got a hold of Dad. Michael called me and said, "Hey, my dad says you won't leave him alone, and so you have a job interview tomorrow at 1 p.m." Now, Durango, Colorado to Phoenix, Arizona is about an 8-hour drive, 7.5-hour drive. And I didn't own a collared shirt or a suit or a tie or shoes or a belt probably at that point. And I said, okay. And I went to JCPenney's in Durango, and I got a full off-the-rack suit. It was so waxy and plasticky and terrible. And ironed my life away all night long, woke up the next morning at 3:30 in the morning and drove to Scottsdale. Literally got out of my car at Raintree in the 101 right here, walked into the bathroom, took a sink shower in my freshly ironed JCPenney suit, walked into Michael's office, and he said, "We made it so you couldn't get the job, and you're here." He pulled open a drawer in his desk, and he goes, "Look how many resumes I have of people that want to work here." He said, "We have I think you had to be in the business for 6 years before you could get a job there. You don't just
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and he said, but you've called we can't teach what you've done. You've called every single day. There's not even an interview. You're a car sales guy. And I was like, cool, what do I do? And he's like, go sell cars. Literally, they didn't give me a phone. I didn't have an office. I had nothing. He was just like, come back in 2 weeks and you're going to sell cars. That's how it went down. Yeah. By the way, I didn't have enough money to even call. I had no cell phone. I didn't own a cell phone at the time. Yeah, 2004, I didn't own a cell phone, and got back in my car. Didn't have enough money to call anybody. I had to save every quarter I had for gas to make it home back to Durango. And I just drove straight back. I couldn't afford a hotel. Couldn't stay here. Nothing. I drove 4:30 in the morning, sink shower, got the job, got in my car, and drove straight back and packed up my shit in a U-Haul and came here 2 months later.
Yeah, that's crazy. And then you became a very successful car salesman.
Yeah, it worked out pretty well. Yeah, it worked out pretty well. I did that for a couple years. Hated every second of it. You know, I like to be liked.
Even at Mercedes-Benz, right? It's like you think that's like it's still just trash.
Yeah, the reason here's the deal. Here's the thing about it. You know, the consumer honestly makes it worse than it is. Right? Yeah. Like we're so taught that it's going to be whatever the car situation is, that we come in with too much information and too much of a predisposed idea of how it's going to go down. Mm-hmm. It really can be a lot better at a place like Mercedes-Benz, but they're working against themselves when you come in, so you have to play the game. It just, unfortunately, it's the way that it is.
Right.
Yeah.
So that leads to the next episode of your life, right? Yep. So then our friend Derek Jarr comes in, he buys a Mercedes from you, and he does the same thing that Mr. Schumacher did to you and says, dude, you should sell houses. And you're like, okay, I'll go sell houses.
Yeah. So yeah, he Derek held, at that time, he didn't want any employees, held his, cards pretty close to his vest. And, he just said, I'm in real estate. We became friends first for probably better part of a year. And then I went to his bachelor party in Vegas, and I had to leave early. I had to leave Saturday night of a weekend trip with a bunch of guys. It was super fun. And he was like, man, what are you doing? I'm like, dude, it's Sunday. Tomorrow's the last day of the month. Yeah. It's the end of the month. And he was like, but it's Sunday. I'm like, the car business 7 to 7 days a week. And I got on a plane that Saturday night. And as I was leaving, he said, let's talk about a change in lifestyle. And I ended up becoming his door knocker, wholesaling deals. And did that for about 5 years. Quit. Joined with him, and he had the capital and the relationships and the knowledge in the business, and I had sales acumen. So I literally every single day woke up and went and knocked on the doors of people who were in pre-foreclosure and offered to buy their house cash so they didn't lose their equity. The acumen. So I just keep remembering things. Sorry, so I have to go back
from the last episode.
No, just because of stories and conversations, right, that we have had. So, and being with you when we're at restaurants can be somewhat annoying.
I didn't know this because you've never told me this.
Guy knows. He just, dude, he wants to order for everybody. He knows everything there is to know about fucking sake, wine. It's just like, I mean, we go to a restaurant in Aspen to go. We're there for a Modest Mouse concert
and Bone Thugs.
And Bone Thugs, I mean. And we're sitting there just like, he wants to go to this like really nice sushi restaurant, but he also has to watch the UFC fight at the same time. So we've got the phone in our booth watching a UFC fight in this like 5-star sushi restaurant while he's having like this intellectual conversation with our waiter about sake. Like, and I'm like, just order the fucking sake. Yeah. Like, just get the sake. But what I found out is that there is a lot of different versions of sake that is way better than the normal sake that you get. But because you were so good, and I asked you why you are the way you are with this, and you said the reason why you're so good, you were such a good waiter, is because you knew everything. So when people came to ask you a question, like you were just what do you need to know, right? And the more information you know from a waiter, as we know, we just had dinner there tonight from a kid that was probably his first day at a nice restaurant, and I could barely understand him because he was low talker, and I'm just like, he makes a huge difference to people when you go to a nice restaurant and you know when the waiter is like, I love great waiters, so I understand where you come from. And again, yes, it's not that annoying, but it is a little bit. Because he'll order for the whole table. He'll be like, you're having this, you're having this, and we're like, all right. Yeah. And Robin will look at me and she'd be like,
by the way, have you ever been pissed? Have you ever been pissed?
No.
Okay. No. We'll get
he
that out of the way.
At it. That's for sure.
Here's just, for listeners who are, from a business perspective, I talk about brokerage a lot. when people ask about brokerage, owning North&Co and having that whole thing going is, I talk about if you have good technology, good office space, good training, a good broker, and a decent culture, that's like saying that you're a restaurant with good ambiance, warm food, a friendly menu, and a good waiter.
Yeah.
Like that's just the baseline to enter, right? And so whether I was a server or I was a car sales guy or I'm a real estate salesperson or a brokerage owner, it's all about an experience, right? It's all about an experience. And if you think about the best concert you've ever been to, I guarantee you the details were managed down to probably 1,000 things you never knew happened. You didn't see them happen. The best restaurant you've ever gone to or the best service you've ever had, that person was studying something in the background and you never saw that happen. The greatest people that are the best at whatever they are in the world pay way more attention to the details than they do the big things.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't know really where that came about. I really don't. But, when I worked at the restaurant, we had a linen company that dropped off our button-down shirts and our aprons. And I was the only person, I don't know why I did it. Well, I did later, actually. I'll tell you this little micro story, but I would take a stack of aprons home and I would iron them. Like most everyone would come in, just grab an apron and unfold it, and it would have like the square pattern from being folded, right? Well, I'd go home and I would iron them and hang them, and I would I'd grab mine and bring them to work. And I remember one day a friend asked me, "Why do you iron your apron?" And I said, because don't you know the people that we're waiting on here? They all own businesses. They all have access to opportunity. I'm thinking of coming to wait tables as an audition.
Totally.
Right. And so for me, it was like auditioning, and look what happened. Mr. Schumacher ended up offering me an opportunity. And then the same thing in the car business, right? When I showed up in the car business, dude, I studied the history of Daimler Chrysler from 1898 when they invented the car, and knew that they invented the seatbelt and anti-lock brakes and the A-pillar and the C-pillar and why they were the safest cars in the world. And I knew everything about from horsepower to torque to, anything you could imagine. I knew, so I could tell, like, if I get a guy that's going to come in that's bought his 40th Mercedes-Benz, what am I going to really be able to do to blow him away? Guess how many people could tell the historical story of Daimler Chrysler and their relationship of creating? Most of them didn't know that.
Right.
They just wanted to flash, their newest model or the story of the one they had back when they were whatever. Take it to the next level. I know the power of building rapport in sales, common ground. And I was at the time 28 or 29 years old. And what common ground am I going to have with an affluent 50 plus demographic? Almost none, right? So first thing I did was I got, a magazine subscription to Cigar Aficionado, Golf Digest, Travel, Condé Nast, Food Digest, Wine Spectator, and just started studying every single thing I could. In fact, one of my favorite things to do at the time was go to the wine store and buy to find the best bottles of wine under $13. And what I did is I got this book called The Wine Lover's Companion was the name of this book. And I would get a bottle and flip it on the back and go everything from grape varietals to the locations to the different regions and appellations and years and all that stuff, and just flip through this book and learn about wine, so that when I was in the restaurant, I could speak wine. And then when I'm now in the car business and they're buying a car for me, like, what are you guys doing now? We're going to dinner. Oh, where are you going to dinner? Here and here. Oh, have you seen their wine list? Their Wine Spectator, whatever. Oh, have you had the blah, blah, blah? Like, hey, sneaky value. Check this one out. They'd come back to me to talk about wine, not to buy a car, right? So that stuff, for whatever reason, has just carried with me my whole life.
Trish?
So I understand as a customer or as your boss, that would be awesome and cool, and I get the value. Did your coworkers or colleagues find you super annoying? Like know-it-all, like the kid in the front of the classroom with his hands always being raised? Were people like, seriously, Brian?
Well,
like,
jealousy's always going to come with shit like that.
I think that agents do, honestly, but I have a little bit less interaction than I used to when we were 75 or 80 agents. I really feel like at this point that my partners and employees look to me for that unique perspective. The other thing that I've learned to do is not like, when do I really need to insert every piece of information that I have in my brain on everybody all the time? that came with maturity for
Right.
sure. There was a time where it was just like, I know the answer to this. I have to say it, you know?
Yeah, I was referencing more of like your younger years. I know you're not like
oh,
that
it was
now.
super annoying for everybody. And, like, to the point that if we really want to get raw, probably 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, Stephanie, my business partner, Stephanie Gonzalez, started like being like, you should go on vacation more. You know, you're a lot happier when you go on vacation. And then I would come back and she'd be like, God, you're really disruptive. You know, like you come into our meetings and you just like, we're just cruising, things are working. And then you have to like, no, there's this way and that way. And what about this? And have you thought about that? And it became to the point that like, I actually ended up kind of, for a brief period of time, better part of a year, losing my identity within the brokerage, you know, architecture, within the business architecture, because everyone was telling me how, frankly, disruptive I was.
Didn't she basically tell you one day that she was mad at you in some fashion?
Yeah, totally.
Because
and it wasn't exactly what we're talking about right now. It was just, my thing is also, I don't think a lot about like, if we dissect something and break it apart, what's the negative, the short-term negative effect of that? Because I tend to live in a long-term brain space. And it's really difficult for people who live in short-term brain space. And I realized that like, I couldn't help but be like, you guys, you can't see what I can see 3 years from now, which I would never say. I would have never said that out loud. But it was this thing where it was like, no, please, like follow my lead here. And in the midst of just being down in the dirt and grinding every single day, you're like, sometimes, Brian, just be quiet and leave us alone. And I can't. I mean, it's my job to not leave us alone. Otherwise, we get complacent. So what it is, it's now grown into this thing where, yes, progression was from the guy who had to share every single thing he ever knew in every book or encyclopedia he ever learned to like, okay, I'll really be deliberate with my time, to now I know that most things really aren't important until they are. And, you know, I've gotten much better at being a lot less disruptive. And frankly, they've gotten a lot better than me at a lot of areas of the business. And so there's this opportunity too, to just be like, hey, you know, I know you're better than me at that space.
But being a disruptor is part of what has been so magical about you and your business, right?
Yeah,
You
I mean,
guys
I
do things differently.
sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, look, if you're disrupting anything, just go into your life and just disrupt something. There's collateral damage, no matter what. There is no way to get away from that. First, thank you for saying I'm a disruptor. I mean, that term carries something cool in my world.
A disruptor.
I think of myself as disruptive, but but you know, disruptor, not yet. I'm coming though. I'm about to seriously disrupt some shit for sure. The part right now that I think generally we'd be known that's been somewhat industry disruptive is that we've probably not leaned heavily on technology. We've gone heavily into the people space, and then I think our brand reputation, our marketing, has definitely been contrarian to what's been traditional in the marketplace. But you know, in terms of what we're about to accomplish and the impact I want to make in the world and an industry, we're not even known yet for what we're about to do.
So what you're about to do is part of your brokerage called North&Co, so we didn't really get into that. So you left Green Street. Well, basically, Derek sold you Green Street, right?
Yeah.
In a way,
yeah,
whatever. He just didn't want to do that traditional space
Yeah.
anymore, so he was doing more of the...
Basically, what happened was there was an agent body there. There was a group of about 35, 40 agents, and, you know, we were going to go our separate ways. Those agents were people I'd trained, recruited. I'd been through personal sagas, trials and tribulation with them, and I just couldn't let them go. You know, it was like there's a lot of really good people and great relationships that we'd created. So it was just, how can we make this co-create a situation where you can move on, Derek, and don't have to do brokerage anymore, and I can go do it. So I did. I took over operations at the brokerage there with the help of Stephanie, and over the course of the next year, we incubated the brand North&Co, and in 2015, we launched North&Co.
So when you guys launched North&Co, did Stephanie come over right away?
She was already there. So
she was with
it was all part of it.
Michelle was there. Stephanie was there.
Stephanie, Michelle, Anne-Marie McGeorge, who's now our CFO. She was our outsourced CPA at the time. So, you know, while it seems like she's a new, quote, employee, and she's a partner in the business as well, she's been there since day one. I mean, she's watched us go from making $2,000 a month to what we're doing now, which is great.
So one of the, I think the issues I remember seeing was you were a team called North&Co at Green Street, and then now you became the company North&Co, and you're recruiting agents to be working at North&Co while you were the main agent at North&Co. You were the guy, right? So you be going on a listing appointment, and you might have to battle one of your agents that's going to the appointment with the same name, like John Smith at North&Co. But by the way, Brian North from North&Co. is also coming in.
Yeah.
Like, how did that, like, I mean, it still kind of has, well, I know it doesn't really happen as much anymore because you've pulled yourself out of that whole world. But for a while, though, that was one of the obstacles you kind of had to deal with.
You know, it's funny. I've heard about it now. I didn't know it then. I just didn't believe it in my head as an obstacle, right? I mean, fortunately, my last name's not Schmidt. You know, that would have made it a little challenging. North is ambiguous enough that, you know, we had a lot of people that they found themselves comfortable because there's some ambiguity to the name. But, you know, I created some pretty instant boundaries in that space within the company. So, you know, if there was ever a time that I was going to compete against one of the agents, there were only two options for the client. And that was either that you get them alone or you get the two of us together. And little did the client know that the agent got 100% of the commission. Yeah. So it was only a value add, right? I mean, that was a really easy thing to remedy in my mind. Anybody who ever said that after the fact, they didn't come inquire. Right? They didn't ask the questions. They just got themselves affixed to something that...
Or that might have been an urban legend coming from the other agents from other companies.
Of course. There's a ton of that. Yeah, so, I mean, you started... one of the first things you said were, so for the people that like don't know you or think they know you, and I'm like, I don't think anyone really knows me, if I'm being real. Yeah. You know, one of my favorite things I say is, if you don't have my cell phone number, you don't know me. Right. That'll shrink that list down pretty damn small. There aren't a lot of people that have my cell phone number, and so you know, it's one of those things where there's a lot of guessing games out there, and I like it just like that. Yeah.
So then let's move into kind of where we're going now, because, like you said, there was a few years where maybe the last 3 years or so, where you and I've had plenty of conversations and of like. I remember even you asking me in the car going this summer, like, you go, what should I do, dude, with my life, basically? Like, I just don't know if like I want the brokerage to be successful. I'm going to always be part of that, but I'm just built for bigger things. I just don't know really what it is yet. Right. And you've been on this, like, sort of, what I just found out recently during that same summer is when you decided, basically, like, I'm not overly happy with myself and I need to make some changes and I need to figure out how to do that. So regardless of where the brokerage is at, is running great. Personally, you've hit a spot lately where you're just like on a freaking rocket ship.
Yeah.
And I think people may be seeing it, and I've had people ask me what the fuck's going on with Brian, because everybody knows that you and I are really close, right? Yeah. And maybe my answer before, when you would do a post or something, I'd be like, I don't know. Yeah. Now I'm like, watch out. Yeah. This guy's fucking clear, and then he's got some stuff going on, and having these guys here with us, by the way, today, like, everything you've said today is you're the type of guy that's gonna be successful in what you're doing, and you can talk about that or not talk about that. I know you're going to be successful in it because you know too much shit. Like, you're the guy that people will literally learn from, pay to learn. Like, I personally don't. Like, that's not my thing. I think I can tell a story, and I think I can inspire. But as far as information, dude, I mean, it's for years you've got stuff going on, and I think that's of value to people. So let's talk about that summer.
Holy cow. Well, first, in order to get the listener to where I was at this summer, you got to go back to divorce. And I was with my ex-wife for 21 years total, which is a long time considering I'm 45. Yep. 2 beautiful kids together. And when we met each other, I worked at Blockbuster Video in Durango, Colorado, and I was making $4.10 an hour. So you can imagine how many iterations of Brian she experienced before I owned North&Co, and we were still married when I started North&Co. And the decision for us to separate was in February of 2018. That really started the emotional breakdown, not me breaking down emotionally. Yes, there was part of that, but really breaking myself down emotionally to understand how I got there. I'm a winner. I win. I love to compete. I'm a warrior. And I just lost the most important thing to me in my life, which was my family. And it was an opportunity for me to blame her or it was an opportunity to really go inward and go, how do I never do that again?
Yeah.
And the deeper the layers that got peeled back in that self-discovery process became, the more layers I wanted to peel back and the more information that I found. And that's when I started uncovering how many layers of social conditioning there were. Who brainwashed me to believe that the life I was living it the way I was supposed to live it, that I was supposed to work as hard as I was working to make as much money as I could make, to spend as much money as I wanted to spend, to have the house I was supposed to have and the neighborhood I was supposed to live. And it was all made up. That was the first thing I realized. It was all fake. It was literally a made up reality. Some of it's really cool. I liked some of it, but I realized that most of it I didn't. And so I really had, my eyes and my awareness got opened up to what was really important. And it started by having some of those deep conversations with my kids. It started by asking my girlfriend, what is wrong with me? And letting her share back with me what she really thought was wrong with me and where I could grow. Listening to my business partners, talking to my best friend and asking him like, bro, what do you think I should do with my life? And really just opening up to like the new possibility of what that social conditioning, I'm going to recondition everything. I'm going to keep some things, but I'm literally open to knowing nothing. Right.
Yeah.
Because if it got me there and that's what it feels like to get there, then I don't want to take any of that shit with me. So that really started it. And it started with books. One of the best books I read during that time was The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle, which really taught me the value of the word surrender, really, really surrendering. And there's a little passage in that book that just was right at the right time for me. And I talked about surrender, and it was really just starting with what is now, like right now, the power of now. What do you have right now? The next question is, can I make a difference? And if so, what is the difference I can make with my now? Okay. And if there is something I can do to make a difference with my now, then do it now. Right. That's it. Mm-hmm. If not, you're just going to be stuck doing the same thing that you're doing. And then he related it to the difference between somebody in jail and somebody who's not. And a person in jail has the same opportunity as someone who doesn't. You're like, okay, I'm in jail. This is my now. What can I do to better the situation? And then it just gets down to full surrender. And at that point, you start to get the information you need when you surrender to like, what is next? And so that was the first. Then I read another great book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Not too much to go into there, except for fundamentally, as we tie ourselves to people, time, and things, we start to limit our possibilities in the real world. So, a classic one is like, oh, I can't go back to college to do the thing I always wanted to do until my kids graduate from high school. That would be like a classic example of like sacrificing possibilities. There's definitely a way to do that. We just got to be willing to go. Yeah. So that was another phenomenal book for me. So it was through books. I read The Alchemist, Siddhartha. There were just a bunch. These books are about seeking and the hero's journey. Then I watched The Hero's Journey. Joseph Campbell has a great YouTube called The Hero's Journey, and started opening me up to like, it's possible for me to literally rip off everything I've ever worn in my life, get butt naked in the middle of the world and start new. It's fucking scary. But how much scarier is it than going through what I'm going through right now? This fucking sucks. You know what I mean? This is as bad as it gets. So I'm going to keep hanging on to all the shit that got me here to make it a slightly better version of that, or I'm just going to rip it all off and fucking go. Yeah. And I did. I started ripping it off. And the first thing I believe is you have to believe it. You have to think it in your head. It's possible. There's a guy, Bob Proctor, phenomenal. If you guys can ever listen to any meditations or anything by Bob Proctor, he's amazing. He's a legend. And he has a saying. He says, if you can think it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. Right? And I say it every day to myself now. If you can think it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. And the first thing is that. Second thing then is I got to start talking about it. I got to go out and say it, because when you say it to people, you start to get natural accountability partners. Right? Or you just become a liar, right? Yeah. Like, dude, I'm going to do this thing, and then I'm going to see you, and you're going to be like, bro, like, how's that thing? And I'm going to be like, I haven't done shit, right? So if I say it in the world out there, especially to people I care about, then it's going to start, I'm going to be held. I know I have to go do it, because the next time I see you, you're going to ask about it, and I need to be able to have an update. So that's the way I operate. So start to say it. Well, by saying it now, I'm going to start to do it, because I know I need to live up to my accountability partners. And then I start to see some micro results, and all of a sudden things start to change. And the first thing I started saying out loud was, I'm not a real estate agent anymore. And that was really scary, because I've made millions of dollars as a real estate agent. And there's an ego with it. I'm Brian North, real estate guy. I'm the guy who goes to all the restaurants and says hi to all the people, and my name's on all the buildings and all the billboards and all that stuff. And like, I'm going to take that off and walk away from it. And guess what's going to happen? That I know is going to happen. Our friends are going to start going, Madrid, what the fuck is Brian doing? Like, what is up with North, dude? I know I'm going to have to go through that process of like, that's weird. Yeah, no shit, it's weird. It's hard to like completely undo yourself. And those people actually, just so you know, I know what they're doing. They're going, that's really interesting. I kind of want to do it too. But instead of embarking on it and asking him questions, I'm just going to project and say he's weird. Yeah. It's a lot more comfortable to do that. But I know
I would agree with that 100%.
Yeah. And if they don't, and if they're not, and they just think I'm weird for being up to some real growth in the world, bye. That's really where I'm at. Bye.
Yeah.
And so that was that path that got me to probably September last year. So we're about a year now. So September 21 is when I got into a rhythm of like going out to fancy restaurants and drinking too much and staying up too late and waking up late and just being kind of hungover most of the time. And I'd lost my sense of adventure. I started getting physically out of shape. Fast forward to you and I, we're in California. I got there on June 2nd. I got to California. You and I hung out late June and maybe mid-June. Mid-late June. And I got there June 2nd and the waves were pumping. It was perfect. Like for my like ability level at this age of my life, it was literally a dream day. First day I'm there, I paddle out, and in the surfing world, we call it getting sent to the beach. The ocean just sent me to the beach. I couldn't make it out. I couldn't paddle out. And I gritted my teeth, and over a 45-minute period of time, it was war. I'm just going to make it out there. I can't not make it out there. I made it out there. I literally almost passed out. No kidding. I almost passed out, and eventually made it back to the beach, and I sat on the sand and cried. And I was like, this is it. This is that time. 45 years old. This is that time where I'm going to either just succumb to age and go, it's over. Like, it is what it is. I'm not going to do it the way I did it anymore. Or I'm literally going to adopt that day-by-day mentality. But the cool part was, I would say, I've never hit a rock bottom. I'm not like, I was never a drug addict, an alcoholic or whatever, depressed, holy cow. I feel like I got close, and for the people who are, keep fighting your ass off out there, because holy cow, I've never officially been diagnosed depressed, and as close as I got, I'm so sorry that you have to go through that for those people. But that day by day became a real thing, and I started digging myself out of a hole, and it got back to being curious, literally to the point that I had a method of going, I'm going to ask the people that I care about that are the closest to me, like, what do you think I should do? You know me better than anybody. We've had those deep, dark secrets. We've had a lot of fun together. We've traveled around the world together, all those, and we've known each other a long time. We've supported each other in business. Like, if I'm not doing that, what should I be doing? And I remember your response was something like a motivational speaker, which will be part of it. That'll be an element of it. I shared something with you this morning about how I'm going to motivate people, which is pretty interesting and part of my the way I like to think. But that carried me through the summer. I quit drinking. I started surfing every day, and it was like I wasn't surfing to go rip the bag out of some waves. I was surfing to get out there. Yeah. Once I got out there, it was like, just get one good one. Then it was like, how about a session? And then it was, little by little, it was progressive. I started running every day, started getting my health in order, insatiably reading books. I was back to reading business books again, which I hated business for a year and a half. I talked pretty regularly to my partner Stephanie about selling the brokerage, and it wasn't because of the brokerage. It was just I was just out of love with life, and that thing occupied a ton of my time. And started journaling again, and man, probably about the middle of July, I picked up my meditation practice again, and I went all in with meditation. I went to a yoga retreat. And this was probably early July, actually. I went to a yoga retreat with Donnie Starkins. He's a yoga instructor that a lot of people will know here in Phoenix, but he's in Solana Beach now. And it was a full day yoga retreat where it was an hour and a half of yoga, an hour and a half of meditation, an hour and a half of holotropic breathing. And at the end of it, a guy came up to me and sat down next to me and just said, man, I've watched your journey today. It was really cool hearing some of your stories when we would share. And he said, what do you do? Real estate. I said, what do you do? And he said, I serve earth medicine. I was like, oh, like what kind? I'm familiar because I've participated in psilocybin journeys through my divorce. It really helped to kind of crack me open emotionally where I needed. I was having a hard time crying. I was having a hard time laughing. I was really becoming callous in my life, and it was just somewhat dark. And psilocybin, for those that don't know, are mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, and they were opening me up. I would just sob and I'd just cry and get it out of my body, or I would laugh hysterically and get some joy back in my life. And so I asked him, like, ayahuasca, mushrooms? And he goes, no. He goes, we commonly refer to it as the toad or BUFO. And I was like, oh. It's the big one. It's the big one. It's the big dog. It's the one where if you really want to do the work, you go. And he said, are you interested? And I said, well, I've thought about it, but I'm scared. And he said, if you're scared, then you might be ready. Let's get to know each other. Let's exchange information and on from there. And that was really where things changed. Things at that point is where I went super deep on meditation, my diet, quit drinking coffee, caffeine, really just got super cleaned out. And was ready for the potential that would happen. And roughly August 5th, 6th, something like that, I got a text message from Don Burgesson, and said, I've got 3 retreats coming up. One of them's in 2 weeks, and it's a full immersion. It's going to be the heaviest one I'll do for the rest of the year, which is a 4 medicine ceremony over 2 days. If you're interested, I think you should do it. And I looked down at my phone, and I looked at Robin, and I said, I'm going to Joshua Tree. She said, for what? And I said, for an earth medicine journey. Changed my life for sure.
Yeah. Was she immediately supportive?
For sure. Scared.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, the idea is whoever's going there is not going to come back.
Yeah.
So until you go do it, you don't know what that means. Like you just take in our normal 3-dimensional selves, we go to like, fuck, is he going to be weird when he comes back? Is he going to get hurt while he's there? You just don't know what these metaphors mean, because what happens there is super hard to explain in words. And I felt the same as her, but I was so committed to this idea of, they talk about it as like an egoic death, or you go there to die metaphorically, things like that like I really, that warrior part of me loves that, like, let's go to war. And so there was this part for me of like going there to die that I fell in love with. I really was like, this is it. This is my shot right here. I am going there literally to undo every single thing I brought here in my life, and coming home what I'm supposed to be. I knew it was about to go down. Because I'd been preparing for 3 years. Yeah. So I knew it was about to go down.
So I don't know how deep we can get into some of the stories from that place. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there'll be some things I keep somewhat sacred, but not for fear of sharing something that someone might judge me on. No. There's just some stuff that's sacred, which, dude, just right now, just so you know, it's so freaky. That honestly, the deepest, most impactful part of my entire thing that I've shared with you had to do with the buffalo.
That's the part I wanted to talk about.
Yeah,
Is that okay to talk about?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. I think I've told maybe one person this story because it's freaking crazy. Yeah. And this is, to me, the part where the skeptics, I think maybe sometimes, it's just so hard to like argue this moment. Yeah. And I can't.
Yeah, there's a buffalo on a picture frame staring at me right now. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
And I want you to tell the story because you tell it. I mean, we both cried when you told me the story because it's. I mean, there was a lot of times where him and I sat down, like when he got back, and I think it's something that I'm not afraid of many things, and I think that's probably one of the good parts about me, and probably one of the hard parts about me. I don't understand other people's fears as very well, so. For me, going on to do something like this is just like a challenge. It's like I want to go do it, but I do really want to go do it, and we know that. But it is definitely like a challenge as well, right? Yeah. To see kind of where I go. But the dancing with the Joshua trees, amazing. Yeah. But the buffalo story, dude, and getting to like picked basically. Can you start from there? Are you allowed to say that? Like I've chosen to just tell the part that you can tell.
Yeah, I'll share anything, man. I mean,
Okay.
when you talk about chosen, what exactly?
I can tell the whole fucking thing.
Yeah,
think,
no,
dude.
so
and that's the thing, because it's like, dude, I remember every single thing a bit about your story. It's about like when it's the shaman basically chooses who's going to come into the to the middle, and he does. There's no real rhyme or reason, but he does it except for the energy he's feeling at that time. Correct?
You got it.
Okay, so he chooses. So he chooses somebody else that we know. Right. And you watched that whole thing, and like you said, that experience of like watching somebody go through that is crazy. Yeah. Right. And then you were hoping that it was going to be you that was going to be next, because you also loved that other person, right? You're just like, dude, this is going to be badass. Him, then me. Yeah. So then, he just points to you and says, come.
You got it.
So start from there.
Yeah. So, the thing leading up to it is obviously you can imagine there's fear. There's some nervousness. For me, I wasn't scared. I was definitely prepared, but I was uncertain. I didn't know what was about to happen. And we all felt that way. There were 5 participants and 5 facilitators. And the 5 participants were all new to this type of experience. So we all had the same energy. And my friend goes first. And, when you're on BUFO, this particular medicine, you go out. So, you look like you're asleep on the floor.
Yeah.
And that's pretty scary, right? I mean, you're not awake like you are on a lot of the other medicines. And about a minute into his experience, he's laying there. He looks like an angel. I mean, he's just gently asleep, and he's whispering, "I'm safe. I'm safe. I'm safe." He says it like 25 times in a row, whispering it, and he's like, wherever he is. Yeah. He's like letting us all know, and we're scared that he's safe. And at that point, like the energy in the room just gets like, we're all going to be okay. Yeah. So at that point, I just go into my meditation at that point, and until he's done, at which point, he silently wakes up. He has tears in his eyes. He shows gratitude to the facilitators, and he goes and sits in his chair. You were not allowed to talk, by the way, while we're in there. It's a no words ceremony because there's just so much energy in the room. So I sit down Indian style, and he lifts up he has a prayer that's laminated on an 8x11 piece of paper. And the prayer generally was like, I've waited, everything I've done until my life got me to this point, and I'm walking into this to be with the divine energy, and whatever I've brought here, I'm willing to let go. Any bad decisions I've made in my life until this point were only made with the tools I had. I'm free of judgment for others. I'm free of judgment for myself, and so on. I'm of love, and here we go. And he holds the medicine up to my lips. You smoke it, and I took a nice soft inhale, and at that point, it basically goes white is the way I'll describe it. It's kind of just white light, like a white dream space. So I lay down. At least I think I lay down. That's how I woke up. So I lay down, and quickly I go to this, white light. It's the best way to describe it. And at that point, it's hard to describe. There's like an energy there, right? Again, it's like being in the clouds. It's the best way to describe it. And you can only describe it in words. It's as if an entity said to me, "You have so much power to do for good." And your warrior energy is good for the world. There's just a need for you to be gentle. Be a gentle warrior. And at that point, I sat up, literally and in my sleep. Remind you, I'm asleep. Anything I'm about to share with you, I'm asleep. Mm-hmm. But my friend shared with me that I sat up at that point. And I put both my fists in front of my face like this, and I flexed my whole body as tight as I could. And what I can describe to you is happening in this, we'll call it a dream space. It's not a dream space, but what's happening is I literally was pulling every single ounce of energy from the universe into my body and flexing like I was awakened, if that makes sense. And I did it all the way until I was I had exerted all of the energy, at which point I turned to the shaman who had administered the medicine, and I went down on all fours, my forehead on the ground, and just like complete and utter gratitude for unleashing me, basically. And he was sitting like Indian style, like lotus style, and he knelt down and he put his forehead against my head.
Did he really do this?
No. No, and not only did he not really do it, but he served me the medicine in front of me, but now is literally sitting to my right, but I'm asleep. And in my dream space, I know he's to the right, and I sit up and I bow down to him to the right, but I'm asleep on the ground.
Right.
And he's really sitting to my right.
Yeah.
So the experience is outer body is in real 3D,
Yeah.
but I'm asleep, right?
Yeah.
So I bow down to him, and he gently puts his forehead against my forehead, and I'm like, you know what you just did. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And he whispers in my ear, I know. Now show me your power. Now keep in mind, he doesn't say those words. It's not like we're not having a conversation.
Right.
It's a knowing. So I start pressing my head against his head, forehead to forehead. And in really short order, in a matter of a couple of seconds, both of our heads manifest into buffalo. So now we're two buffalo heads pressing our foreheads against each other. And he's telling me more. He's pressing harder, which is telling me to press harder. He's initiating me to show him how strong I am. And I'm pressing with every single thing I have. And now he's like, no, more. And now I know he's into what I'm going to refer to as like the supernatural space. And I go with him.
Yeah.
And I press down into the supernatural space. And now we are way beyond human at this point. And we are lighting up the universe in effect. It's just like, it's like as if lightning bolts are just shooting off of us. And like, you know, our heads are pressing against each other. And he goes, everything you have. And I push with everything I have. And it's like, if you saw a freight train going like 100 miles an hour and then it went into warp speed, it was that kind of emotion that just went to like all at one time. And all this light just goes all to black, like I'm going to black out. And right when I'm going to black out, it just goes right back to like divine white light.
Yeah.
And I'm just like light and free and just floating in this space. And my eyes start to flutter open. And I open my eyes and I'm in the fetal position, completely flexed in the fetal position. And I start to like loosen up my body and just start to come awake. And I sit up and he's sitting there in front of me and I do the same thing. Now in real time, I just go full down with my forehead on the ground, just sobbing, just crying with every single thing that was in my body. I couldn't stop crying. And just felt awake. I just felt like the best thing I can share with you is, at least at this moment in my life, I'm free of fear forever. I feel like I felt what death feels like. That like whenever I was afraid I was going to run out of money, I was afraid to die.
Yeah.
And now I know what death feels like. There's nothing like lose money. Like that's where I'm going to go. Like,
yeah.
Okay. Right. And then from that moment, I just went around the room and I just gave massive praise and thanks, no words, dead silent, to every single person that was in the room for creating that space for me. Because energetically, we were kind of taught to like shepherd each person through, just be there next to them energetically. And so they were a part of me going through that experience where it was exactly what I wanted. I knew what the best parts of me were that I could take back into my daily life. And I was free of all the shit that I had brought with me. Grudge against my ex-wife, fear of judgment for my kids, fear that I was going to lose the business one day and be broke, fear of anything you can think of, my resentment toward my mom for my situation with my dad, with my little brother for battling drug addiction, you name it. Yeah. Things that I harbored, judgment toward my little brother, judgment toward my mom, judgment toward my sister for, you know, living a lesser life than I knew they could live. And all that stuff just gone, completely cleansed of that feeling and open to understanding that all of that stuff that happened in my life was one beautiful miracle that got me to that point. That in that moment, had not every single microsecond of my entire life, whether it was the most brutal experience of my life or the best experience of my life, had one of them not happened, I would not have been there in that moment. And it gave me clarity that all things must happen in this lifetime in order to get where we want to go. If you're up for the challenge.
Wow.
Is everybody okay?
I found myself holding my breath almost during the entire story.
Massively intense. And I think that there's even another part of the story that's kind of crazy, is that, I don't know if it was the next day or whatever, but you mind you, this guy is barely speaks any English.
90% Spanish.
Right. He's Mexican guy. And you communicated with him almost asking him like, you remember that, or you were there, right? You remember the whole Buffalo sort of deal, right?
Yeah.
And he basically confirmed to you, yeah, I was there.
Yeah, I sat down with him. I probably got about 4 minutes with him, and I looked at him and I just said, I just started to cry again.
Yeah.
It's a really emotional thing to come to terms with all that stuff you've been waiting to understand your whole life.
And mind you, this is like 6 minutes.
My whole experience was 6 minutes.
That's it. It's not like this is like a day-long deal here.
Yeah. And I sat down with him this was the next morning. By the way, that afternoon, and we don't need to or we can, but we did a extreme macro dose of psilocybin as well. It was probably a 6-hour journey later that night. And so the next day, when I got to sit with him, I just was staring at him and I started to cry, and he just started to shake his head, yes.
Yeah.
And I was crying and he just was shaking his head, and I said, you know what happened? He shook his head, yes. And I was like, what do I do now? And he said, solamente action. Only action. No palabras, no words. What about my kids? They're going to know. He goes, well, children know because children move through energy. So he goes, you don't need to share with them what happened. You don't need to tell them the story. You just go and they will follow you.
Yeah.
What about my girlfriend? He's like, well, how open is she? And I was like, well, what should I do to help her investigate and understand what I just experienced? And he said, hongos, mushrooms. And I said, okay. And I said, well, she's tried in the past, but there's some heaviness that has come in at times. And he said combo, and combo is another medicine that it's not a psychoactive. You just purge.
Yeah.
And it's a cleanse. So that was part of our journey. We did combo first, then BUFO, and then mushrooms. And he said, try combo, because that'll cleanse her out, and that'll get rid of some of the guilt and some of the other things that might be in there that are drumming up some of that dark energy, and that'll be a way for you to connect with her. And that'll be coming soon. So Robin's, she's investigating and watching how I've been after, which is unique. But the conversation I had with him was about 4 minutes, and it was about 15 words. And we both knew exactly where we were going from there, and it was game on.
So we will just do a quick, just really fast on the combo part. So that was first, right? And that is like a purge, and you throw up, and you might do all this stuff. But what is the purpose of that?
Yeah, it's literally a cleanse. It's to get your body completely cleansed. Now, keep in mind, for 2 weeks coming in, I was no alcohol, no caffeine, no meat. I was meditating no less than in 45 minutes to really an hour a day.
Yeah.
Exercising, so I was sweating a lot on purpose to try and get my body just as clean as possible and as pure as possible. And then I did a fast for 2 days before going in, and then combo. And it's my understanding, don't know this to be wholly true, but it's my understanding one of the uses of combo in tribal times was for hunters to do night hunts, because it cleanses you so deeply that it heightens all of your senses, your sound, your smell, your eyes, so that you're really sharp on night hunts. And so if you take that and apply it now to what we experienced, that's how we started this big day, was that purge. And that purge is physical. It's very uncomfortable. It's throwing up. You can, go number 2. And then with that, a lot of emotion comes out too. And so after that 30 or 45 minute experience, again, there's no tripping or anything.
Yeah.
And at that point now, I mean, I'm telling you, you go from like feeling a little tired and groggy in the morning, and this purge is over, and you're ready to go. I mean, you could literally run a marathon.
So one of the things you were talking about too is some of the people didn't come as prepared, as clean, and to watch, like, I think that to me was the scariest part of the whole story, is like just to kind of hear what those people were going through. Some people go to do this because they want to stop drugs, or they're alcoholics, or they're just trying to just change who they are completely. And it, not that it has a negative effect, but it definitely, it's more of a torturous sort of event.
Look, I'll tell you, the one guy to my left during the combo ceremony was having the hardest time of everybody, and he was 6 weeks clean from methamphetamine and crack. And so he was there for a reason. And his purge was relative to mine, was what I would call extreme. I mean, it was, he was moaning, why the fuck did I do this, the entire time, while literally heaving his insides out of his body.
Yeah.
And I got a glimpse at what was in his bucket. And there was 9 years of methamphetamine and crack addiction in that bucket. And so, but it didn't last any longer than mine.
Yeah.
And he literally looked like he shaved 5 years off of his life when we were done. I mean, like he had color back in his skin. His eyes were wide and bright. And it's like, look, you know, if someone wanted to get clean and go to rehab for a year, you could do that. Or you could just have a combo ceremony for 45 minutes. You know what I mean? And it's just kind of like, what's your pick?
Yeah.
So
after you guys went through the whole experience with the BUFO,
yep.
Was everybody ready to go again with everybody was?
Yeah, everyone was ready. I mean, look, BUFO was it's like you're going to Magic Mountain, you know, and there's the one ride that everyone's like, that's the scariest one.
Yeah.
And that was BUFO.
Yeah.
And so after that, I mean, I think everybody there had probably done mushrooms at some point, whether it was like for fun with your friends or whatever. Now, this was a heavy dose for sure. But still at that point, it was like we'd experienced, I mean, I'm going to say it like this. We'd had a conversation with God in effect. So like after that, it was like, all right, well, I'm going to be awake the whole time. Like I'm in control of myself, like generally speaking, those kinds of things. So, you know, at that point, everyone was ready for sure. And the energy was really great. I mean, everybody, we had shepherded everybody through this beautiful experience. We'd hugged it out afterward and like, we were obviously we're bonded at that point. So now there's this safety zone of going into the mushroom experience. So that was just.
Yes, Trish.
So how does this differ from ayahuasca? I have friends who've done that.
Yeah, you know, I don't know because I've not done ayahuasca, so I'm not sure. Generically, I can tell you an ayahuasca journey is much, much longer. You are awake, right? You're coherent. Your eyes can be open, you know, on ayahuasca. The actual medicine itself, ayahuasca, I understand, is a liquid. This is looks like a crystal that you smoke. So they're two different. It comes from a frog. Ayahuasca comes from a plant. So if you kind of like, you know, those are kind of just the fundamentals that I know. You know,
Trey,
between them.
Do you know the answers to these questions?
A little bit. Yeah, I mean, ayahuasca is like a tea that there's basically two plants that grow in South America in the jungle, and the combination of these two plants is what creates the DMT experience. Whereas like the toad is closer to like pure DMT, which you can get like in various places. The toad is it's that fast, quick, sends you straight through the tunnel, where ayahuasca is that long journey. So I've only done the toad stuff, not the other stuff.
Which I just found that out today.
Got it. Yeah.
Senior year in high school, apparently, they did this in Sedona.
Yep.
But so when you guys went and did that night, so did you go home? Do you go back to like your place and shower up and get ready for this next thing, or do you guys? You know,
yeah, you could. I mean, we were in a Airbnb in Joshua Tree, and there was a guest house. The guest house is where the BUFO ceremony happened, and then I mean, it's very free flowing. You know what I mean? And if you want to shower. Some people took a nap. You know, it's just there's a big energy dump, and then you know, we kind of gear up. It was light snacks, stay light in your stomach, fruit, nuts, things like that. Get hydrated. Hydration's really, really important through this process, and then mushrooms. And we sat out under the Milky Way on a crystal clear desert night. How it was 82 degrees in Joshua Tree August 19th, I have no idea, but it was. And it was basically just a heavenly night where, you know, at that point after BUFO, your heart is wide open, right? I mean, it is just gaping wide open. And mushrooms, the way that psilocybin works is it tends to be more cerebral downloads, information. And so you have your heart open now, and now the mushrooms are really there to bring in the cheat codes for what's next.
Yeah.
And the best way I can describe what I experienced for 4 hours was God shooting a laser beam of love into my heart, pretty much is the best way to describe it. I just cried like I was being loved for 4 hours.
And danced.
Yeah. I mean, there was music playing. It was just like no sound, kind of tribal shamanic style music. And at one point there was a cool drum beat and my legs started moving and I stood up and danced for 2.5 hours crying my face off. Yeah. And by myself under a Joshua tree. Yeah. In the dark under the stars. Yeah. It was,
what
beautiful.
about the, I remember you talking about like you had your arms like this and you held them up for like an hour and you're like, how am I so strong?
It wasn't so much about the strength. It was, so at one point it was literally this feeling of like pure love.
Yeah.
And it was like, so this is God, this is what you've been trying to tell me you do my whole life.
Yeah.
And it was just this feeling of like, this is what God's love feels like. And I just stuck my arms out like as if you were kind of like rejoicing, to God and dancing. Yeah. And it felt so good that I didn't put my arms down for like an hour. Yeah. And at one point I was like, wow, my arms have been held out for an hour. Like, I'm a lot stronger than I thought I was, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, no, it was just kind of that feeling of like, man, just feeling really, really, really alive. I felt loved. I felt safe.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was starting to garner a knowing for what was next.
So your intentions, like when you left there, and you got home, obviously you're on this high and you have all these things that you're like, I'm going to do this, and this. And I remember even saying like, at one point Robin said to you somewhere along the lines of like, okay, now you're going to tell me what to do because you've experienced this and now you know everything.
Yeah.
So you're having to also navigate all these emotions and all these things that you want to do, and then you have to create them all, right? And I think that leads to where you are now, and what you're gonna do, and maintain obviously the brokerage and all that stuff. But you're gonna, I think it's gonna work, in together, right?
Yeah, for
so
sure.
you're gonna. I already people can you already come in and. When you speak, it's like, you do have like the little bit of like a prophet thing going on where everybody's like, here comes Brian.
That's aggressive.
It's aggressive, but it's sometimes you feel like that. Yeah. And then you decided, okay, I think I know what I want to do.
Yep.
And it's not necessarily the public speaking, but that's part of it.
Yep.
But I think it's just, tell us what it is, because I think this is Jordan,
right? Tanner. Yeah. Tanner's here from Tan Social with Paul. And so they're I hate saying I've hired them, but I guess technically that's what we've done, right? We've agreed in contract that they're going to help me build out my coaching business, both on the marketing platform as well as building out the coaching program and delivering it to market. It's not as like linear as decided to do something and going to do it. I think it's important for our listeners, if I could really impart on them that what it is just to start doing something, right? And the biggest thing for me in coming back was I still remained highly emotional for a period of like 5 days afterward. And one of the more profound moments was, first, let me back up. The biggest thing that happened to me there, my intention going in that I wrote in a journal was, I'm asking the medicine to reveal what needs to be revealed, guide where I need to be guided, and to let me fly. That's what I wrote in my journal. Because at that point, I was the opposite of flying. My wings were clipped, but I knew I was capable because I'd flown in some form or fashion my whole life, right? Anything I could dream up in my head, I could make it happen. And I was in a spot where I was not making I was digressing, and I was digressing fast. And so the first thing was that I'd been being told on a regular basis, we talked about it in the metaphorical way with Stephanie saying you're disruptive, that this warrior Brian was bad, right? That this place I felt the most comfortable, which was that competitor, that thing that wanted to go into the storm and fight. That thing I wanted to, that part of me that just loves running head on into shit, was bad. There've been times that Robin has shared that with me. There were definitely times my ex-wife told me that part of me wasn't healthy for them. And so I was really confused why this place that I was so comfortable in my own skin was being received as bad. And the first thing I learned there that just a version of it wasn't working in the world. And that was the combative conqueror warrior. I mean, you've heard me say many times, take over the world. I'm going to kill that fucker. I'm going to take that. They're going to go down, that kind of language. Yep. That language wasn't serving me or anybody else in the world. And what I left Joshua Tree with was a gentle warrior. That there was that warrior part of me, that competitor can never go away, period. It's who I am at my core. And with that, It was, how can I do it in a way like Madhu, who was my shaman, who put his head against mine and had me extract every ounce of energy from the universe while he just sat perfectly in lotus with his head against mine, that I could be as gentle as he could and show up as a warrior and get done what needs to get done in the world. That was the biggest lesson I took away. And when I realized that, it was now what is my job? What is my path? And what I realized is that I'd spent so much of my time in business not egoically having it be about me, but that I had to be better to deliver this better Brian to the world, to show people what they needed to do in the world. And what I realized is it had nothing to do with me, that I'm really relatively insignificant, but my superpower is sitting across from people, whether it's on screen or in person, and asking really curious, deep questions, challenging bullshit, offering unique perspectives, and ultimately guiding people back to themselves. I really don't give any answers to anything anymore. My thing now is just to go, you already know the answer. Every person wakes up every day knowing the one thing they need to stop doing that day. And then they choose to do it because for one reason or another. And for me, it's that thing of, you already know. They already know what the answer is. How can I guide you back to your own answers and then inspire you? Really, most of the people who come to coach with me, they're asking me for permission to do what they know they need to do. Brian, will you just tell me it's okay to do what I already know I need to do?
Or not, or stop doing what they already know they shouldn't do.
No, because that's me giving them the answer. They already know they need to stop doing that. So they're there.
But you asked that question, though.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah.
There's examples of it we both that I know of,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That, and that sometimes makes people uncomfortable. They don't like to hear, but that's okay.
Yeah, you're
That's
right.
not your
It is
problem.
okay. And one of my biggest inhibitions going into the ceremony was that I started caring way too much what people thought. If I was going to talk about religion, I was afraid that someone at my brokerage, one of my agents who was religious, would think that I spoke out of turn for them.
Right.
If I was going to talk about, meditating, that was going to affect somebody weird or I got so sacked by what everybody else was thinking. And ultimately, when I arrived at this thing of gentle warrior and help guide people back to themselves, which is what I'd been doing every day in my business life, then that was the beginning point of where I was going to go. And at that point, what I had to do next was I had to start trying it. And I got on social media and I started saying shit into a camera, things that our friends were like, who does he think he is? And I knew I was going to have to go through this thing where I was going to lose a lot of people, a lot. I knew I was going to become weird and boring and all these things. I knew it was going to be part of it, where before I wouldn't have done it because I was afraid of the loss. And now I know that in order to get anything new in my life, I have to lose things. It's pruning in the natural world, right? And as soon as I fell in love with the concept of, hey, look, I love all of the things that are in my life today, but if you have to go away so that I can go do what I'm supposed to do, then that's going to be part of the process. And it's really that simple. And that's where I started talking into the camera and where I started opening up. But in between coming home from California, end of August, and talking into the camera, very shortly, very, very shortly, within 3 or 4 days after my Joshua Tree experience, Tanner called me. And Tanner and I had a run-in by way of one of his sales guys maybe 2 years ago, right after COVID. And they were talking to me about scaling a real estate coaching business. And at the time, I got on the phone with Craig. Craig and I had a couple conversations, ended up getting on the phone with Tanner. And at the time, Tanner's conversation was about helping me make millions and billions of dollars. And that was his kind of sales message at the time. And I didn't resonate with it at all. It's not really my jam. And
Right.
I was like, these guys aren't my guys. Didn't talk to Tanner for 2 years. And here I am 3 days off of this moment that had changed my life, and my phone rings. I'm on my drive home from California, coming home from this time in my life that was transformational. And I look down at my phone and I'm like, I think I have to take this call. I pick up the phone and I take his call, and he's like, dude, what's up? Brian, it's Tanner. Tanner, what's going on? He's like, I just moved from Vegas. And all he was saying was, I just moved from Vegas to Arizona and I'm want to get together. I liked our conversations and wanted to see if maybe you could help me network a little bit. I'm new to town. That was it. And I was like, sure. But remind me exactly what you do. Like I knew, but I wanted to be sure what was happening right now. Just like that. And he went through exactly what he does, soup to nuts, and they offer an all-in-one suite that is everything from they're here to film, then they're going to take and break that into a million pieces, and then they're going to do social media management, and then he's going to help with paid ads, and he's building the business for me.
Yeah.
How
old are you, Tanner?
23.
Yeah.
23.
Which is very young, right?
Yeah.
But it's also very impressive.
Well, there's actually a cool part of that. This part of the story that I'll share with you.
Hold on, for this,
go.
because when you were telling me the story originally,
Yep.
The whole Lamborghinis we're going to make millions of dollars. That's like cliche young guy that's got a shit ton of money projecting on social media.
Yep.
And, some do, some don't.
Yep.
But not weird for a
no.
21-year-old kid to do that, right?
No, especially when he's on that path himself. Right. He's doing
exactly.
it. You know what I mean?
So he's 23, but it's 2 years is like 10 years.
Yeah.
Really,
full
right?
on.
So a maturity level of growth in business and life is just, it's impressive.
Yeah, no doubt. And the more I get to know him, the more impressed I am.
And I really wanted you two to meet, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because he's a fucking genius too, by the way.
Full on. So I listen, he tells me the whole thing, and I go, well, it's probably not going to be real estate coaching, but you called me at exactly the right time. I'll be back to town in a day. Let's schedule a time to get together, and I want you to come in. And I gave him something. I said, here's what I want to know. And I go, but I want you to come in to it was our second meeting. He came in, we talked kind of about what we did in business, what he could do, kind of the lay of the land. And I asked him a point blank question: how much is it going to cost me to get profitable? I said, assume I'm a B- player.
Yeah.
Assume I'm a B- player. How much is it going to cost me to get profitable? And he gave me the tuition, which is the biggest one-person signed contract I've ever signed in my life.
Yep.
To work with somebody on one-time fly. And I said, okay. However, I want you to come back to a second meeting because our first one went like it went, and I want to know who you are. I want you to tell me your story as a human, as a person. I want to know who you are. And he came in and he sat down and he told me his whole story personally. And in that meeting that we had together, I started accidentally kind of doing what I do, asking curious questions. And we started talking about it, and he made a statement about, at my age, like, I just have had this chip on my shoulder because people don't take me seriously because of my age. And I was like, that's your own social conditioning. That's your own conditioning. Tell me why, let's talk about, and I just started doing what it was. And by the time we were done, he looked up at me and he's like, dude, like, so who are you marketing this to? And I was like, well, I was thinking about mostly people my age, but my passion is really people your age. And Trey knows this too, right?
Yeah.
Really my heart, Trisha, you know this too. I mean, my heart is in the 20-something demographic.
Yep.
And he's like, dude, this is fucking fire. Like, everything you've shared with me is like, I'm taking it all home, and this is the goods. And I was like, this is it right here.
Yep.
So, his thing right now is he's like, we're going to build it, with the way that he can do ad work. He's like, we get to give it to everybody. So, but knowing that you want it to be to this demographic, like, that fires me up. He's like, I can't wait to do it because everybody that I work with, all my colleagues who are all my age, are going to get to learn while we get to build your business.
Yeah.
And at that point, it just lit me on fire because, nothing more powerful in business than when you're aligned with somebody. And so that process got us to a point where I signed a contract without a contract. I think I sent him $10,000 and I didn't have a piece of paper that said what we were going to do. And that was just that was the first, that was the first installment.
Like, I think
and then I was like, hey dude, can you send me like a scope of work? Yeah, I did. I'm not even kidding. But because I was so aligned, you just know when you know, especially in the state that I'm in and was in. And at that point, he shot me back a scope of work, and we went to work, and he's held me to more deadlines, and we've gotten more done in, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks of time than I've gotten done in my business life in probably the last 3 or 4 years. And I think we'll have the whole thing launched probably in the next 45 days, and we'll be out there guiding people back to themselves. Yeah, I said the other day to a friend, I'm like, how people talk in the investment world, like, the taxi business is a $7 billion industry. If we could just get 4% of the market, we would be rich.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what I'm thinking about now is think about there's 7 billion humans. And if I could just get 4% of people to realize how fucking amazing they are so they can go do whatever they want, imagine the difference we can make in the world. That's what I'm up to.
That's incredible. I'm super proud of you. You're a great potential guest, by the way, on this podcast too, because I know a little bit further the depths a little bit from our conversation before. But yeah, I'm always impressed by younger guys, and I've gotten to a point, and I said this a few weeks ago too, that it fires me up to get people their age fired up and opportunities to be so much further ahead than
Well,
you and I were at that point. And when I see that shit, I'm like jealous partly. Also, but like, dude, like I'm also like, this is gonna be freaking awesome. And then I become their biggest fan and I become their biggest bragger.
Yeah.
You know what
Well,
I'm saying?
it's two things I want to say too. Like one, it's just reciprocity at its finest.
Yeah.
I'm adding value to him. He's adding value to me.
Totally.
I'm adding value to him. He's adding value to me. And, you know, like we're riffing. He'll be like, dude, a book I just read, 12-Week Year, which is such an amazing book if you haven't read it. And instantly I go get it. And then he's telling me, he's like, you know what I do? I listen to it on Audible and I follow along in the book at the same time because the retention is so much better. I'm like, I'm never reading another book ever again. So it's like that way without doing it that way ever again. So just these little like riffs, right?
Yeah.
But even today, he said something to me that's I'm so lucky to have played the game this way. But he's like, dude, it's just so exciting to like. He's like, I think you're the first client I've ever had that just does what I say. And I'm like, yeah, why wouldn't I? I just invested a ton of dough and a ton of time with you, like, because I think you're the best. So why wouldn't I? He's like, yeah, but most people are like, I don't want to say that, or I don't want to do that, or I don't want. I'm like, dude, I don't know what you do. All I have is a bunch of words, good ideas, some wisdom, and I care a lot about the people who are going to work with me. Your job to deploy it. So you tell me how we're going to go get the most attention possible so we can make the biggest difference in the world. Game on. I'm in. You know what I mean? So it's
I mean, it's a huge opportunity for you, for sure, for him as well. I think because you guys are going to build something to get together that's probably going to be very successful.
Oh, I know his trick. He's going to make it so big I got to keep coming back. You know what I mean? He hasn't told me that part yet, but wait until we have $1 million a month ad budget. You know what I mean? He knows what he's doing.
Oh no, this is just the first this is just the first chapter.
Totally.
Right? And then you're going to have to do it again, and then you're going to be in front of airplanes. I'm just kidding.
No. Maybe.
Exactly.
Maybe. Yeah.
Hopefully, I'm going to be your personal assistant then.
Yeah, that's it.
So Trey, he went to Toronto Film School and graduated during, I've told this story almost so many times, graduated during COVID, went to LA, no work, right? So now he's stuck here doing podcasts with us. So our production quality is really good. So, if you guys ever need anybody, freelancer right there, dude. The guy's solid at all kinds of different things.
Well, I will tell you this, in everyone's business life, there's somebody that has to have someone that told them they couldn't do it, and then they go do it for that. Trey, you're my person, just so you know. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Yeah, I'm totally kidding. Yeah.
All right, so before we wrap this up here, do you guys have any other questions?
I would actually, this
is as quiet as Trish has been on the podcast in a long time. So
sorry, that's because I talk a lot.
No,
it was good.
No, I was like entranced. Yeah. But when I was thinking on the way here, I was actually listening to Michelle's episode again for like the 13th time.
Yeah, she's
I just
amazing.
Love her. But and I'm sure Ryan hates this because I bring this up in every episode I possibly can. The female leadership is definitely something that is very unique to North&Co.
Yes.
Even though you are Brian North, I really think of Stephanie and Michelle as like steering the ship. And I don't know your CFO.
She's a gangster.
Yeah, I don't know her. But, I know that some of the people who have recently joined you, those two women, had a lot to do with why they went. It was less you, more them.
For sure. And it's growing that way more and more. I mean, there's 17 female employees and 1 male, and his name's Brian. Yeah. So it's completely female-ran organization.
Was that deliberate, or it just kind of happened that way?
It's not deliberate, but not consciously deliberate. Subconsciously, I was raised by a 17-year-old mom that I took care of most of her young adult life, and had a little sister that was 2 or 3 years younger than me. And my grandmother is really my superhero. So the people that I've been responsible for either taking care of or being closest to my entire life have been female. As I've grown through business, though, I will tell you that while it was subconscious, it now makes perfect sense to me. And sorry to all the men in the world, but we've got to step our game up seriously from this perspective. One, and I don't know if I'm going to say the right words in the PC world, but I'm just going to free speak here. In my opinion, men live in a man's world, right? At least until this point. And that's really comfortable and really safe. And we don't really have to do anything different because it's a man's world. And women, if they really want to get on in this world, they've got to learn how to live in a man's world.
Yep.
And fundamentally, that means they've got to hone their masculinity, whatever that means, whether it's speaking direct, shortening their sentences, being less emotional, not crying in the boardroom, all these kinds of things that are beautiful, beautiful things that are completely necessary for a well-rounded work environment, believe it or not, to everyone listening. But it's been beaten out of most women, right? Not physically, maybe along the way somewhere in tribal society, but until now, multi-generationally. But now it's like none of that's allowed to exist in the corporate world. What I've realized, though, is that, in order to run a real estate brokerage, a highly emotional industry, that we need a lot of EQ. We need emotionally intelligent people. Well, guess there's nobody better than that in DNA makeup than women, except for the women that we've hired also have a beautiful ability, superpower, to show up masculine when needed. So from my perspective, it's women have superpowers, bottom line. They can do anything that's needed in the workplace, unless it gets to a point where the male is so frustrated that it becomes physical. That's the only place. And that even doesn't really stand true much anymore, because men have gotten sedentary. So what once used to be this very tried and true thing that we were the more physically dominant, women have fallen in love with things like CrossFit. And so there's even a transition in the physical space happening right now. And if men don't get themselves together, we're going to be significantly out superpowered in a very short amount of time.
Plugged all the women out there. Jeez.
That's the best answer you possibly could have given.
It's real. And I've thought through it.
Obviously.
I've thought through that at depth, because look, I've been accused of just hiring a bunch of pretty women. I mean, I got lucky just, from the optics of the business, that they all happen to be beautiful inside and outside. They are physically beautiful women. And, in a very egoic, business, it's easy to be like, oh yeah, Brian, just surround yourself with a bunch of pretty women. I'll put my executive team up against any company. Forget real estate brokerage, any company, period, that I know of, and go, let's go heads up in the C-suite. I mean, they are animals, world-class business people. So from that perspective, it's one of those things where I've had to think about why the women, why the pretty women, and really what's the answer, because I know their real value, and that's where that truth comes from.
Stuart and we talked about this really quickly after our very first meeting where you announced us. And at their meetings, each person goes up and, gives their presentation about what, whether it's Annie or Stephanie or Andrea, they do their presentation. And it's like the same person. I hope this doesn't come out wrong. The same person coming up and giving like the best, most like structured, organized presentation, articulate, like boom, 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 boom. It's just a same person with like a different face, but it's just a totally different. The fact that you can get that many people to do such a good job and feel so comfortable in front of all those people and be so good at every aspect of the business and their job, whatever it is. I mean, like, again, dude, we were sitting next to each other going like, holy shit, this is impressive. This is impressive. And I know Stuart's gone and probably said this to you, but I know for sure he's gone and told Stephanie this. Like, this is really, really, they've done a very, very good job with that aspect. So moving to that part, we are a partner with North&Co now, which is something
awesome.
we've been trying to do.
Sorry it took so long.
Yeah, it didn't take long.
Yeah. Only 10 years.
10 years. But that's another cool story too, right? So we never really, him and I were just friends forever. We did very little business together. We had some partnerships with some other agents that, that were working there. But when we became Bison, we never stepped on the toes of VIP because of our other good friend, Kent, who worked here. And that was his account before he came here. And, that's not really our jam, right? So when we did become Bison, Brian, Kent, and I met at Vicina. And it was literally like we had some tapas and a 45-minute conversation, and we're like, it's time. But we wanted Kent's blessing that it was okay, because now we're going to be the new partner there. And we had to come up with a way, though, because Brian is very loyal to everybody who's been there. So the other people that had been there forever, since the beginning. They really hadn't brought anybody new in. And so we were able to come up with a structure that worked, right? And it's funny, after talking to Stephanie, they still, the C-suite, they still didn't really want to do it, because they're just like, we've been loyal, we said we would never do it, and Brian just said, sorry, we're doing it. He goes, and then Steph goes, well, Brian loves working with his friends. So that's basically said, this is my friend, we're going to work with him, and everybody else there is his friend. So that your partners within the company, they're all your friends. And I think you guys have all done a really good job you've done an incredible job of including your partners in, I hate saying vendors, but the people that work with you from the title side or from warranty side or from the lending side involved. I mean, to the point where we're constantly getting messages and stuff to Stuart's like, are we going to be able to do all this stuff? Are we going to be able to even be involved this much? So kudos to you and the team, obviously. And it's been a pleasure working with everybody, and we're just getting rolling. Obviously, we're about a month and a half in. So that's a huge part of where we're at with us, but that's not our relationship, right? So we're both kind of moving into different paths, and we're bringing opportunities. And that's what I look at it. So for me, having that account is creating an opportunity for somebody to go. Now it's their job to go build something. Just like Trisha has the brokery, and we gave her that opportunity, and she murders it. I mean, she does a lot, probably more than anybody, I think.
Thank you.
And that's what's cool to me now. It's like we have these other spaces, other companies that we can do stuff with, but when I hear you doing all this other sort of stuff, and where you're going in your life now, I personally it's definitely flipped my mind around a little bit of what I really like to do. And it's not necessarily doing loans, so to speak, but I feel super lucky that I get to work with my sister, but I also work with Stuart, and I get to work with Jeremy and everybody else in this company. But my two direct partners are such great people that I do like coming here. And so I don't know what the next chapter is for me, but I know that I'm lucky enough to have what I have now, and I do like it. But I'm definitely inspired.
Yeah.
And as you roll, I think there's going to be opportunities for me to kind of follow in your footsteps in some ways.
I already have some really good ideas. You said earlier, which I completely disagree with, that you don't think you're a coach that people will pay you to get information from. I disagree wholeheartedly.
I do too.
You have one product, as Tanner would teach me, which is the way by which you know how to make people feel felt in a conversation, whereby you create new business relationships. That's what I'll call it. There's no one in the world, and you can processify it. It's a process. If you really broke it down and went, how do I do it? The part that I don't know if you're, all you'd have to do is decide that you want to figure out the emotional part, because you can't do it without caring.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think when you say that, you're like, I don't know how I would articulate that part. No problem. I can articulate, you can tell my stories. I could tell that part of your story, but processing how how patient you are. I mean, you knew we'd be a partner at some point, right? Together.
Yeah.
But there was an unlimited time limit. It was just a matter of time. Some of them accelerate faster and some of them not. But for you to go to people who are startups or salespeople who are looking how to actually create long-lasting relationships for never and ever and ever and ever, you have a book that can be written that nobody else can write that book. And so that for me is, and you already do it. This is, at the end of the day, it's like all that we should really be doing in our life is the thing that is the easiest for us to do. That's it. And it's easy for you. You don't even, how many people in this industry ask, what the hell do you do for a living? Everyone, right? Nobody knows what you do, right? You make more money for nobody knowing what you do than anyone in the history of the world. And all you do is you know how to make people feel good. That's it. That's what you get paid to do. At the end of the day, when it's all over, you have an extraordinarily intentional way of making people feel good. And a lot of people have it in them, but they don't know how to get it out of their body. They don't know how to process it. They're nervous, they're scared, they're afraid of judgment, they're whatever. And so that's just one little micro part of it. But yeah, man, there's you know what I would say too, at least for me, for the brokerage. Remember I was telling you earlier this year, I had lots of conversations about selling the brokerage because I was out of love with life. It had nothing to do with the brokerage. Yeah. Today, I literally will spend every single second of my waking time and my money watching this brokerage go to
the moon,
the most insane, beautiful version of what it's going to be. The reason I fell in, what happened in that 6-month period of time, besides the stories I told you, is I recognized that the brokerage wasn't a real estate brokerage to me. It was my playground. It's a place where I get to go do everything that makes me happy every day. Yeah. I get to go sit with people when they're scared about market conditions and guide them back to themselves, when they're having a hard time in their personal life because they're working so much, and guide them back to the answers they already know about how to mend their relationship, when they're not spending enough time with their kids because of all the other things that are going on in their life and they know the answers, and work them back to that space. When they all come back to me and say, Brian, like, I knew it all along and you just helped me understand that I had the answers right in front of my face and I went and did it. It's not about, I didn't do anything. I literally didn't do anything. I just sat with them, had a conversation to reveal the answers they already had. And I get to do that at scale now. And now the mission is, how many people can I get in front of me to be able to do that? Because life's so much easier when you realize how good you have it.
Yeah.
Our motto, expertise without empathy is failure. Mm-hmm. It's like so applicable here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, like we're super good at the technical side, like many people are. Mm-hmm. But we have that heart, and the true the customer manner. Experience, and that is more important than the transactional.
Yeah, and
that sets us apart.
That's what you're seeing when you bring up Stephanie and Annie and Christina and everybody in front of the room. Like, wow, they're so polished and their delivery so on point and all that stuff. Remember earlier when we were talking about if you're going to have a great experience, you got to pay attention to the details. Right? You don't think we've rehearsed? We've sat in front of each other like dorks and practice it, that we haven't timed every meeting to where our most proud thing right now is that we have a 1-hour meeting scheduled every Wednesday from 11 to 12 and it ends 14 minutes early almost every single time because we've everybody has honed. How is it that every one of those people's really a pretty good public speaker? Yeah. I will tell you that none of them, I mean, mortified. And we've said, hey, let's sit in a room, and it's going to be more embarrassing to talk to me than it is in a quiet room with me this far away from you than it is in front of the room. So it's all of those details that we've paid attention to that get to that experience. And then now you grow it out to where it is now. And now we get to play. It's going to require a massive amount of work. I'm up to things in the brokerage I never thought I would be up to again, like cold calling agents. Be like, man, is that desperate? You know, like, is there a feeling of that? Like, desperate? Yeah, it's desperate. I'm desperate to make sure that every single person that needs what we have at North&Co is at North&Co. Literally, that's my thing. I went from being scared to cold call to going, I'm doing the world an injustice and a disservice if I don't get on the phone and call agents to see if they want to come here. I'm excited when people hang up on me and laugh at me because I'm like, I'm one call closer to the person who's going, oh my gosh, right? And it's a completely new way of looking at things.
What has been your reception? Like,
it's one of three things. It's either like what company? Literally, like they have no idea who we are or what the company is. Yeah. So it's like, and then they're just like, no, I've never heard of you and I'm happy where I'm at. So that's one. The second one is a lot of like the highest producers, they're like, no, like I don't
love you, but nah.
The most common response from top producers are, I don't need to learn anything about I don't need any training. I work from home.
Right.
I don't really use any of the tools.
That's the home smart people.
It's everybody.
Okay.
It's literally everybody. Everybody. By the way, the highest tiered agents at the highest thought of luxury brands say the same thing as what you're referencing as an agent from HomeSmart. It's the same thing. And you know why? Because the brokerage industry is dead. It's as cliche and boring as you can possibly imagine. Every single brokerage meeting starts with, I've got the coolest office, I have the best technology, we have great training, and the cheapest splits. That's it.
Right.
Everyone's selling the same shit. And then EXP came in with the downline model, and everybody else adopted it because they were losing agents to the downline model. So that's reactive. So nobody even has their own soul. There's no soul in the industry. Nobody has their own identity that says, this is who we are. We're a standalone. And there might only be 5 or 10% of the market that adopts who we are. But that 5 or 10% is going to stand at the top of the mountain together with their arms out like, you can't get us, right? And instead of doing that, everybody's playing the same game, dude.
Right.
The same exact game. And that's why agents don't believe, that's why they're split sensitive. They're fee sensitive. Because they just don't believe there's anything that's like, look, why would I pay you 10% split when I can get the same thing for $150?
Right.
And they don't believe that there's anything different because they've had 10 conversations in the last 2 years and they're all the same.
Yeah.
There's nothing that's being delivered that's different.
So what is the biggest value add that you say to them when you talk to them?
Business development. And the first thing I do is I ask a question and I go, how many homes have you sold year to date? 2 in 10 can answer the question. They usually will say, 24 to 26. That's the most common answer is like that range, right? Or they'll go to volume because everyone wants to, it sounds so much better to say hundreds of millions of dollars. So they go to like 17 million is what they have no idea how many units, right? And if they can get close, then what I'll say to them, I'll go, well, here's the deal real quick. Understand that usually if you do know the answer to how many homes you've sold, if I ask a question like, what is your average of % commission per sale year to date? They have no idea. And the reason that's critically important, that number, is because if you can increase your percentage of commission per sale, you can decrease your units and make the same amount of money. And all I have to do is ask those 2 questions. 95% of agents, I don't care if you're making $1 million a year, swear, $1 million a year or $100,000 a year, they can't answer at least one of those 2 questions. And when they can't do that, then I get to open their eyes on everything that we do to help them from starting a PLLC to creating a budget, a tax plan, and then ultimately building the framework of the economics of a business so they can track and grow their business in a way that's meaningful and forward versus reactive when market conditions happen. And as soon as I have a conversation like that, then all of a sudden things like brick and mortar, culture, technology, training, development start to come into light and you go, now I get it. This starts to be a little bit different than what's going on out there. So at this point, they'll ask me straight up, Brian, what do you do? And I say, I build businesses. That's the current version of North&Co.
Brand and culture is what I hear all the time.
Yeah.
With
And
you guys, I mean, when I ask agents why?
Yeah. And I say,
why North&Co? It's those 2 things.
I love it. And, I have this thing, I accidentally created this pyramid not a pyramid scheme. I call a marketing pyramid. So I was in a marketing meeting and I just organically, I was drawing while someone was talking, and it's the marketing pyramid. Okay. The marketing pyramid, have a pyramid, and the first level of the pyramid is unknown. Okay. So they don't know who you are. The second one is heard of. I've heard of you guys, right? That's the second ladder. The third rung on the ladder is seen. Oh yeah, I've seen your guys' stuff. The next one is known. Oh yeah, I know who you guys are. And the last one is felt. When your brand is felt, then you know what's up. And what I would share with you guys that's happening right now is we're going from known to felt. And when we get to felt, when you're going to say, oh, what about North&Co? And they're like, oh my gosh, they have the greatest people. Have you ever been to one of their meetings? Like he said what he said when he's like, Stuart and I'm sure, and I know Stuart said, and are we going to be able, that's our transition from known to felt. And when we have a felt culture and when we have a felt brand as a company, it's over. And we're in that transition right now.
I would agree completely with my curiosity was always though the very successful realtor, if culture means as much to them. So it's like the 20, the 15, or even like the 5 to 25 million a year.
So it doesn't in the spirit of what they know culture to be in the residential real estate brokerage. No, it doesn't mean anything to them. But what we've curated from day one was we don't take brand new agents and there's a minimum production standard, which isn't massive for a top producer. It's 12 units or 4 million, right? Yeah. Which isn't a huge number, but at scale, if you have 300 agents that do 12 units or 4 million in sales a year, and then everybody shares everything that we've been teaching from PLLC entity structuring through budgeting, tax planning, and then building a designed scaled business and then having track record for meteoric growth. Tell me in any industry that you don't need that culture.
Right.
No, I'm good. I don't need it. I'm already doing 20 million in sales. I don't need a culture of people who are doing 30, 40, 50 or aspiring to do 10 to 20. You know my favorite people to learn from? Tanner. Fucking Tanner. He's 23 years old and teaching me stuff every single day. As soon as I've decided that because I made a bunch of dough and I'm older than someone that I've got it all figured out, it's game time.
Right.
I'm dead in my tracks. And so for me, it actually makes it easy, Ryan.
Yeah.
It literally at this point is easy. I started, we said we wanted to recruit 100 top producing agents by the end of this year in 90 days.
Yep.
Okay. When I said top producer, it's a minimum production of 4 million, which again, to most people are going to say not, but I can turn up 4 million into an 8 million in 1 year. So for me, if I get an 8 million, I do 16 million in a year and a half. I believe that, right? So 100 agents by the end of the year. How are we going to do that? 1,200 outbound calls a month. We thought that would procure 60 appointments, and we thought it would get 30 onboards a month, giving us our 100 for the year.
Yeah.
On September 18th, 19th, 20th, something like that, Christina and I started making 30 outbound calls a day, which would get us to 1,200 outbound calls a month.
Right.
In 10 days, we procured 28 appointments and 17 onboards in 10 days. And these are top producers, right? Teams of 4, teams of 9, small brokerages that wanted to meet with us. Why? Because we have the goods.
Yeah.
We literally only right now, I can say that we have something more than a cool brand and some good agents and those sorts of things. We've got the goods right now. And at this point now, it's just people being willing to go, am I willing to go over there and smell it out and see if it's really what I think it is? And at that point, it's incumbent upon us to perform. We know our thing behind the scenes right now is prove it. That's what we say to each other. If anybody has any words that are shiny in a meeting right now, we look up at the other person and we say, prove it. That's it. And that's our whole thing right now. Oh, you don't think we have, or you don't need culture, or you don't need this, or you don't need that? Cool. What do you need? Literally, we have Monica as part of our experience in our recruiting meeting where we're sitting there and we say, we have this to deliver to you right now. And they go, well, it all sounds so beautiful. And it's like, Brian, you're so good with words and you're so excited. Like, how do we know? And Monica literally opens her computer, gets open an Excel spreadsheet, gets her and looks right at him and says, tell us what I can do to prove it. Anything you can think of. And we're even in the process right now. Watch out, everyone. I'm putting you on notice and I'm being real about it. Is what we're doing right now is we're considering what is something we can create right now that would be a scaled use of time where we could put agents who wanted us to prove it through a 1-hour training in biz dev so that they know in 1 hour, I can send you home with enough upside that I can make up the delta between the split you pay at HomeSmart and the split you're going to pay me in 1 hour. And if I can do that, the rest is on you, right?
We need to do that.
So kind of big question towards the beginning about like how do your colleagues or your classmates or whatever feel about your kind of I know it all attitude? How do you think you're viewed in the brokerage? I know you don't give a shit, but what is your take on how other brokerages perceive you with this kind of like, I mean, we know people who are leaving their brokerages and going to you.
Yeah.
Some people probably aren't too happy.
No, for sure. I think there's two glaring perceptions. One is the good guy perception. You know what I mean? Like overall, he's a good guy, which I mean, I'm not spiteful and I tend not to do people wrong. But I have to run a business, right? And there's people that I would consider friends in the business where their agents are going to come to our brokerage. By the way, vice versa. So, at some point I got to fall in love with that, not be on defense all the time in those particular spaces. But a couple common ones I've heard from some of our direct competitors in the Arcadia Paradise Valley market is that Brian is what he is and he's really great at helping you grow your business, but the faster they grow, the farther away from the business he's going to get. Right? Which is beautiful. Trey, I mentioned earlier, that person that I'm going to work against my whole life, it will be how at 10,000 agents can I have the company feel today like it feels. That's my mission in my life because everybody's betting against me. Everyone's betting that when I get rich, I'm going to disappear from the brokerage, right? Everyone's betting that when, things get so big and so scaled that there's going to be so many layers and levels that Brian won't be accessible anymore. And that's my mission in the business. After that, I mean, if somebody said that I did something wrong to them, it would be left to a filter of perception, because money is secondary to me. Money, for me, I'm up to everything I just shared about what I do in the brokerage world. And when I do that better than everybody else, guess how much money I'm going to make? A lot. So I'm never going to watch a ticker tape of how much money's coming in, because as long as I'm making massive impact in the world, the money's going to be there. So look, the business is a hard business, and there's hard times in those businesses. But if one of your top producing agents wants to come to my company, I can't sit there with them and sell them on why they need to be back there if I know that what I have is better than where they currently are. At the same time, I will tell you, there are real time today competitors of mine that I've literally called on the phone and said, I can't tell you who, but I can tell you that you need to clean house, because there are people that want to leave your brokerage and you need to go ask around. There are times I've gone to people and said, hey, I know that there's the potential in your brokerage that you may want to sell. Do you want to do it now? Because we might be interested before things change. I've done everything I can with regard to being on the up and up, but if I know that you harbor ill will toward me and my company has what your agents need, it's just a matter of time at this point.
Yeah, and I feel like we're like at our infancy stage on a lot of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we struggle with, and I know it's getting late, we got to wrap it up here, is
we'll go all week.
First of all, recruiting is a tough deal as it is. Yeah. And because most of my recruiting success, I think, or even our company's recruiting success has come from the emotional intelligence that we like to talk about. It's come from building relationships over time. And, you just meet people and they end up liking you, or you end up liking them and stuff. I've never been a cold calling type of guy.
Yep.
That's never been my deal. And when you have a market right now and you have companies out there that are just writing checks, for us as a small company, we're not writing checks.
Yep.
VIP doesn't write checks.
Yep.
So the recruiting success, we've had a couple people that we thought for sure were just like, it was easy. Like we were solving all the problems, making way more money. And then it just doesn't happen.
Yep.
And so I'm in a little bit of a frustration sort of mode right now, because the way things are and rates being high and just inventory being low, or just people just not making moves, right? Just trying to figure out, I know what we have. We need to figure out how to do a better job of letting the public understand what we really have, right? Because everybody knew us as Stuart and Ryan, the Crawford team, and we were very successful. Now being Bison Ventures, they don't know. We haven't done as good of a job marketing, not doing marketing, but like you said, paid ads maybe is something that we should be doing more videos, doing more things to get us out there so people get us. But one of the struggles is, for me, I'm not out there anymore. And I used to love that shit. Yep. I just don't anymore. Yep. So I don't go to the broker opens. I don't go to all these events where everybody got to meet me and then decided that they wanted to come work with us.
Right.
So I'm having to like completely pivot and try to come up with a new strategy and figure out, okay, how are we going to do this and how are we going to tackle? So to me, it's our partners, right?
Yep.
It's people it's the agents that we work with. It's everybody. It's the title reps. Who do we know that's moving? Who do we know that's not that happy? Dude. And then going.
I'll share with you, though, you do need to pick up the phone.
I know.
I hate, but you do. And my thing is, what the biggest thing for me is? Guess what the number one positive response I get is? Thank you for you calling me and not having some recruiter or some secretary or VA call me. Like, look, even though I'm not going to make a move and I'm happy, it's just a big move. And after I heard it for the 15th time, I'm like, gosh, sometimes like the thing is so much simpler than you think. Like the worst thing that someone said to me is, nah, man, not interested right now. Keep doing what you're doing. Like that's the worst thing. Right.
Yeah.
And you know what I say when I call? Hey, how's it going? It's Brian North at North&Co, owner North&Co or whatever. Hey, how's it going? Then I'll go, on Mondays, I pick up the phone and call top producers like you to see if they might want to move to North&Co. And then they say, no. And I'm like, how come? Do you know about us? And they'll be like, well, yeah, And then I'm like, are you sure? And then they're like, okay, I'll meet with you. Like,
Yeah.
that's it. It's
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
but there's no script. It's just like, hey, on
Yeah.
Mondays, I call people like you to ask if they want to come to North&Co. That's it. And then they're
Yeah.
either going to object or they're going to be like, actually, yes, I'm interested. That's it. And then the objections sometimes are like, no way, my dad's the broker. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, dead, right?
Yeah.
But it's really simple. And then the reason I'm sharing it with you is because it's the same thing that I have is we need to get in front of people.
Yeah.
But going to broker opens isn't going to do it. And going to the whatevers aren't going to do
Yeah.
it. It's like, I'm calling you to see if you want to meet to get better.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing. And if they're like, yeah, I'm interested. And my whole thing, you should hear everything I do with everybody is like, just so you know, I'm not bringing anything. Unless you want me to prepare something, I'm not preparing. I'm just coming to meet you. And then we meet and I'm like, mostly I don't want to talk about real estate.
Yeah.
And we talk and I meet them and I get to know them. I usually leave without them knowing anything. I always say right when I sit down, again, it's too simple sometimes, but it's like, we're not going to talk about my broker. We're not going to talk about brick and mortar, technology, training, or splits. Let's talk about everything else that might be important to you and we'll go from there. And I've just eliminated every other conversation they've ever had about moving to a brokerage. And then we talk about what's important to them, which is usually themselves. And I listen and ask questions to get to know. And by the way, it's great for me because oftentimes I find out they're not a good fit.
Yeah.
Right. I just had someone that I called and she was like, yeah, let's meet. And she came in and when she left, I was just like, I just don't think it's a great fit, you know? And so getting in there and being personal, which is what you're best at. And dude, you'll after the first 5 calls, you know what I mean? You'll be like, God, why haven't I been doing this longer?
Cold calling.
It's not cold calling. Call it something.
We'll call it warm.
One of my favorite hacks is gamifying. Just call it, make a game out of it. Call it something else.
Yeah.
Making friends or something.
I mean, the Monday morning thing's good. You know what I do on Mondays?
That's it.
I call.
That's it.
I call. I make calls.
By the way, don't do Mondays. Yeah, no one likes Mondays.
No.
Fridays are the best day.
Thursdays are always good.
Thursdays work too.
Fridays,
by the way,
agents like to party.
Saturdays and Sundays are really the best day.
Yeah, right.
Honestly, I'm telling you.
Right.
People are blown
Like,
away.
wow, you're
I'm
working
calling them
on
on, dude, like you're calling me on a Sunday?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's because you need me, dog. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, we'll wrap up with that bit of information there. Thanks again, Bri.
Dude, thanks for having me for 4 hours. I appreciate it. Yeah.
We're going to have to make this into 2 episodes, I think.
Yeah. Well, we have a call in 1 minute, I think, too.
I ate my thumb off. I'm so hungry right now.
I'm so hungry. I'm like dizzy.
I know.
With
We're going to go
hunger
eat.
right
So I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. And when we're talking about like the trips and the, the mushrooms and all that stuff, it's like, the clinical side of that stuff, I think, is so important, and it's getting obviously way more important and just common knowledge nowadays. So this isn't
it's not taboo.
Hey, look,
taboo
as
and a
much
weird conversation,
anymore.
but it is something that we both believe in. So if you don't like it, no.
I'm gonna leave it with this: if anything I said left you in judgment or resistance, I would never, if that comes to your mind. That's precisely what you should consider first. And if you do that, you'll get on in this world.
There you go. All right. So again, we are on all the social media platforms. Please go on, check us out, watch the episodes, subscribe on all the social media platforms as well. Into the Storm, formerly known as Real Talk with Ryan Madrid. Thanks again to Bison Ventures and VIP Mortgage. And everybody out there, please share with your friends because this is a really good one. All right, bye.